Chapter 93. Gu Fei's sudden appearance changed the situation on the square. Two heavenly fire wheels tore the meatball apart. Even the warriors couldn't block it. It didn't matter how high one's defense was. Gu Fei was using a spell attack. Only those with high defense could block it. For example, Silvermoon was able to survive Gu Fei's heaven's descending flame wheel because of her extraordinary defensive magic. Gu Fei peeked at his PK value. It had risen to 28. Tears streamed down his face. The few hours he spent in Silent Night Valley were all for nothing. When would it end? What was more frightening was that the NPCs would start hunting him down at level 30. NPCs that looked like combat professions could be seen everywhere in the city. For example, there were 2 guards at the gate of the Mage Academy. How powerful were the NPCs? No one knew. Gu Fei felt that he didn't need to be the first to eat crabs. He had to keep it below level 30. With this in mind, Gu Fei left the last spot for Silvermoon. Sword after sword, magic, and several other moves were used, but Silvermoon stood firm and did not fall. There was no other reason. The main reason was that he was surrounded by a group of priests. The priests cast Revive on Silvermoon as if it didn't cost any mana. Gu Fei stabbed down with his sword, and 3 or 4 healing spells were cast on him. Fortunately, the game didn't have such a design. Otherwise, Silvermoon would have been healed to death by the priests. After a few rounds, an even more important turning point occurred. Silvermoon's mana was exhausted, and King's command was over. The golden light dissipated, and the Silvermoon army returned to the human world. Cloud, Twilight, and the others cheered. They didn't know that this was the natural result of Silvermoon's mana being exhausted, so they attributed the credit to Gu Fei, who was fighting with Silvermoon. The warriors of Silvermoon clearly couldn't adapt to returning to the human world from heaven. They thought that they were full of energy, but they were soon attacked by Cloud, Twilight, and the others. Their HP dropped rapidly. First, the King's command status was gone. Second, a large number of priests died, and a large number of priests only cared about Silvermoon. Cloud, Twilight, and the others were filled with killing intent. They ran over the warriors and rushed towards the priests, killing the surrounding knights. In the blink of an eye, former Dust, who had a numerical disadvantage, was slaughtered. Silvermoon looked around and couldn't find her subordinates. How could the word tragic describe them? A knight's individual combat ability was very ordinary. Moreover, his Silvermoon's mana had been completely depleted. At this moment, he could not even buff himself with a small buff. He could only rely on his high defense to fight Gu Fei head-on. At this time, without the support of a cleric, his HP began to drop. As for his King's sword, its attack power was also terrifying. But the problem was that he couldn't stab Gu Fei, so his attacks were useless. At this time, Sword Demon had already quietly reached Silvermoon's side. He gathered his strength and threw out a backstab. The battle had gone on for so long, and many people had used up their mana. The fact that Sword Demon could still use a backstab was already a testament to his foresight. When Yutian Shinming saw Sword Demon appear, it was as if he had received some kind of signal. He drew his bow and shot an arrow, steadily hitting Silvermoon. Gu Fei followed up with a stab, and Silvermoon turned into a white light and disappeared. Gu Fei immediately opened his stats and saw a bright red PK value of 29. He immediately burst into tears. If only he had used this stab earlier. At the very least, this PK value could be attributed to Yutian Shinming. In Gu Fei's eyes, the battle was over once Silvermoon was taken care of. Cloud, Twilight, and the others didn't think this way. They waved their arms and shouted, "Beat the drowning dog," and sent several teams to the resurrection points to kill. Indeed, the battle was far from over. It could only be said that Defeat the former Dust Army had won the battle in the Mage Academy Plaza. The confrontation between former Dust and Cloud, Twilight, and the others was obviously going to be a long, drawn-out battle. This was just an online game. There was no end to human life, and it was difficult for the battle to come to an end. It was a competition to see who would lose the will to fight first. The one who could persevere to the end would be the true winner. Today's battle against Former World had only one effect, and that was to pull Former World to the same level as Yun Zhongmu and the others. Now that their strengths were similar, they wouldn't be completely suppressed by Former World like they were in the past. It was still a long way to go if one were to talk about overturning the past. After seeing Former Dust's overpowered support skill in group battles, perhaps more people would still be optimistic about Former Dust's future. Sword Ghost Eye's expression changed as he watched the players running around him, radiating killing intent. For him, the quest was over. He would leave the rest to Cloud Twilight and the others. As Sword Demon thought about this, he suddenly saw Gu Fei flapping his robe and walking in a direction. "Where are you going?" Sword Demon hurriedly chased after him. "Wash my PK points." Gu Fei's face was full of tears. Sword Demon thought of those two heroic heavenly flame wheels and patted his shoulder. "Be careful." Gu Fei waved his hand and left, turning a blind eye to the fighting and killing around him. Cloud Twilight, who had finished distributing people, moved to Sword Demon's side. "Your brother is too fierce." Sword Demon nodded. "I owe him a big favor. If he didn't appear in time, we would all be dead." Cloud Twilight said. "What is he doing?" Cloud Twilight looked at Gu Fei's disappearing figure and asked curiously. "Wash my PK points." Sword Demon said. Cloud Twilight thought back to those two heavenly fire wheels and was scared out of his wits. His PK value should be at least 20, right? After saying this, he suddenly remembered that he also had a 27,149 quest. He opened it and saw 29. He was shocked speechless. The NPC was almost going to attack. 30 PK points. Not to mention going to jail, he would lose 5 levels if he was caught. The punishment was too scary. This guy was a true warrior, Cloud Twilight thought. Yutian Shinming, Han family young master, and brother Yu also climbed down from the roof. They came to the plaza and looked around. They didn't see any traces of Gu Fei and asked Sword Demon, "Where did Qinli go?" "Wash my PK points." Sword Demon was already annoyed with answering. Han family young master glanced at Cloud Twilight and Sword Demon. "If Qinli didn't appear, you guys would all be dead." The two didn't say anything. Stupid. Mages don't dare to attack when the enemy is right in front of them. Even their own people are blown up. They're the ones who suffer the most. As long as we get rid of those arrogant warriors at the front. The young master of the Han family was only halfway through his sentence when Yun Zhongmu suddenly shot forward and grabbed the young master by his collar. A thief's speed was much faster than a priest's. Young Master Han didn't even manage to dodge. Yutian Shinming, Sword Demon, and the others were shocked. However, this clearly wasn't an attack. However, this action meant that he was truly angry. It was most likely because of the sword ghost that he did not kill him. "What are you doing?" Han family young master was expressionless. "Remember, we will never attack our own brothers, even if we die." Cloud Twilight roared. "Idiot." Han family young master continued to be expressionless. "What did you say?" Cloud Twilight wanted to attack, but he didn't use skills or attacks like in the game. Instead, he swung his fist towards Han family young master's face. Sword Demon and Brother Yu immediately went forward to separate the two. "If you have the energy, you should hurry up and think of a way to deal with Silvermoon. As long as he still has his skills, he'll get rid of you guys sooner or later." Han family young master said coldly. "Damn you. Who's a bunch of trash?" Cloud Twilight wanted to rush back, but was once again pulled back by Sword Demon. "You're all experts in the game. If you want to fight, use your skills and equipment. Don't just throw your fists and kick the ground. That's not professional." Just now, Imperial God Ming had not stepped forward to stop the fight, and now, no matter how one looked at it, he seemed to be rejoicing in their misfortune. No one paid attention to him. Brother, you comforted Cloud Twilight, Gongzi is right. You guys should hurry up and think of a way to deal with Silvermoon. Otherwise, if he gathers a group of people and uses that skill, how are you going to block it? Cloud Twilight didn't say anything. Of course, he understood this logic as well. After glaring fiercely at the young master of the Han clan, he turned around and went to gather more people. Not long after, there were only the 4 mercenaries left in the square, staring at each other in dismay. Where's Wushang? Yutian Shinming looked left and right, but didn't find unscathed in battle. He's addicted to killing, so he followed the warriors to attack the thief guild. Sword Demon said. What about us? Yutian Shinming asked. You all have PK points, right? If you have nothing to do, let's go wash up together. Sword Demon said. In the end, the 3 all shook their heads. No, Sword Demon was depressed. He had followed Cloud Twilight's lead and gained 4 PK points as well. Moonlit Night City was in chaos. There was fighting and killing everywhere, as if the devil had entered the village. Apart from the people of the 2 major forces, there was no one else on the streets. Watching a good show also required a good atmosphere, and the atmosphere of the Moonlit Night City wasn't suitable for watching a good show. If you winked at someone while they were fighting, it was very likely that both sides would hate you. Gu Fei walked towards the place where the missions were issued. Along the way, the people from the past world were completely defeated. At this moment, Gu Fei felt like he was like Silvermoon's, King's Command. As soon as the 2 groups of people saw Gu Fei, the people from the past world would immediately shrivel up and run away. As for Cloud Twilight and the others, as soon as they saw Gu Fei approach, they immediately felt like they had gained an incomparably solid shield. The thieves also dared to attack the warriors, and the mages also chased after the archers. In actuality, Gu Fei didn't have any intentions of making a move. He was still very rational and firmly held his bottom line of 29 points. After a short while, he arrived at the mission issuing area. This was originally the most popular place in Moonlit Night City, but it was currently sparsely populated. With the current situation, who would dare to accept a mission? If the target of the mission was one of the 2 groups of people who were on a killing spree, wouldn't that be suicidal? At this moment, the people who were still at the mission issuing area were all looking at the data on the wanted list for fun. In fact, some clues could be seen from the confrontation between the 2 major forces. When Gu Fei entered the door, he saw someone cheering, "Wow, it's already at 7 points. That's amazing." Hearing this, Gu Fei hurriedly went over, "Where is it? Where is it?" When the other person pointed, Gu Fei didn't hesitate and immediately accepted this target as a mission. By the time that person was stunned, Gu Fei had already left. This person is crazy, he accepted that mission with a PK value of 7. Sure. Someone next to him motioned for him not to speak. What? This person was confused. He's this. Another person pulled out the overall wanted list and pointed to the highest number, 27149. Butterfly Knot, observing the book reviews, I found that most people don't want the protagonist to have a good ending. Fortunately, I'm protecting him, roar roar. Chapter 94. Not long after receiving the quest, the coordinates appeared. Gu Fei walked quickly on the streets with his head held high. Naturally, he became the weather vane again. Wherever he went, the people from the past world would be routed. Gu Fei was quite depressed. He was such an amiable person, but the people of Moonlit Night City looked at him as if they were looking at a demon king. Even though Yun Zhongmu and the others seemed quite friendly, there was a layer of coldness in their hearts. Now that things had come to this, it was no longer clear how this battle had started. The child elite group had said that it was to help Gu Fei escape, but in the end, the total number of people from the 2 factions was 1,000. Gu Fei felt a bit ashamed. What did he have to make so many people risk their lives for him? But now, Gu Fei felt that he had thought too deeply. Helping Gu Fei escape was only the idea of the people from the child elite group. Yun Zhongmu and the others had only acted because they saw this rare opportunity. On the other hand, if the people from the past world knew that the real reason for this cruel attack was because of 27,149, they would definitely regret it until they couldn't sleep. What did it mean to lose the big for the small? This was called losing the big for the small. As Gu Fei thought about this trivial matter, he moved towards the coordinates. After a while, he arrived at the soldier camp. The coordinates had always been there, and they had not moved at all. The warrior camp was especially lively at this time. To defeat the former world army had sent a large number of soldiers here. It was clear that the most ferocious class under Silvermoon's, King's command, was the warrior class. Cloud Twilight and the others couldn't find where Silvermoon had gone, so they could only set the warriors of the past world as their priority targets and chase them down the streets. Then, they gathered a large number of mages outside the warrior camp, insisting on suppressing the revival point. If they really controlled all the warriors, Silvermoon wouldn't be so scary even with the king's sword. This method seemed to be called pulling the firewood from under the pot. As soon as Gu Fei appeared, everyone was in awe. The ones who admired Gu Fei the most were, of course, the players who were also mages. In their eyes, Gu Fei was a godlike existence. How can this guy's magic attack be so high? There must be some kind of secret. The mages thought. If it had been anyone else, they would have been amazed, and would have thought sourly, damn, this mage class is too overpowered. If I'd known earlier, I would have chosen to be a mage too. Hello, everyone. Gu Fei waved at everyone as he walked towards the entrance of the warrior camp. The coordinates showed that the target was inside the camp. The camp was bustling with noise and excitement. Large amounts of soldiers were piled up, all of them from the past. Right now, they were stuck in the camp, waiting to be rescued by their own troops. Gu Fei was relieved to see this. Previously, he was a little worried about whether he should make a move or not if he brought Yun Zhongmu's men with him. Now that he saw that it was from the past, he felt relieved. When they stepped into the safe zone, the warriors of the former Dust faction looked at each other and couldn't help but take a step back. They had once been King's command by Silvermoon, so they weren't afraid of anything. In the end, they were defeated by Gu Fei's heavenly fire wheel. It was inevitable that they were a little traumatized. When Gu Fei saw that his target was in the crowd, he raised his sword and shouted, "Heaven's flaming wheel!" Ah! The warriors scattered in all directions. It was clear how terrifying this shadow was. They had actually forgotten that this was a safe zone. A smile flashed across Gu Fei's lips. He quickly chased after his target and slashed with his sword. The warriors had already realized that this was a safe zone. They were about to express their gratitude when they saw Gu Fei stab a companion in the face. Everyone was at a loss again. Is this really a safe zone? Naturally, the warrior wouldn't just fight back. He waved his giant sword and wanted to fight back. But when had Gu Fei ever been afraid of a one-on-one fight? In just a few moves, a living warrior had already fallen at his feet. With a bang, a white light flashed, and the warrior disappeared. Everyone was horrified. This was too terrifying. This murderous maniac didn't even resurrect at the resurrection point. Where did he go? Could it be that this guy's killing spree had messed up the system's data? Gu Fei was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. His 7 PK points had been erased so quickly. This efficiency was too high. With that, Gu Fei left the warrior camp without looking back. Only a bunch of warriors from the past were left here in fear. It was undeniable that after such a big battle, everyone was a little nervous. For a moment, no one realized that the warrior had been washed into prison by Gu Fei. Everyone had the same thought, where the hell did he go? Someone sent a message to the warrior, but to no avail. There was a lot of discussion, and everyone was in a panic. What was even more frightening was that Gu Fei suddenly came back not long after he left. Gu Fei was also surprised. He had gone to take another PK mission at 6 o'clock. He didn't expect it to be here again. Heavenly Wheel of Fire. Gu Fei raised his sword and shouted. This time, no one was fooled. Everyone stood still with determined eyes. The wheel of fire appeared above everyone's head, and the warrior's eyes were still determined. Fall. Seeing that no one was dodging this time, Gu Fei didn't care anymore and gave the order. The warriors continued to look up, and the wheel of fire really fell. The warriors cried and tried to dodge, but it was too late. Spells could be chanted and summoned in the safe zone, but attacks shouldn't be effective. What was going on? The wheel of fire fell, and everyone was in a frenzy. But strangely, everyone was safe. While everyone was wondering, someone suddenly exclaimed, "Who's that? Who's that?" Everyone quickly looked around and found that one of their companions was indeed missing. The shock in the minds of the former warriors had reached the limit. This was evident from their choice of words. They were no longer saying, "dead," or "dead," but "gone." Everyone's faces were ashen as they looked at each other in dismay. Suddenly, someone let out a strange cry, "Ah! What's wrong?" Everyone was frightened. 27149 is also gone. This person shouted. "Fuck you." He walked out from the main door. Everyone cursed. What's going on? Where did he go? Everyone discussed urgently. There must be a bug. Contact the GM. Someone suggested. So everyone contacted the online GM. The online GM of the parallel world had the same style as normal online games. First, he complained that their descriptions weren't accurate, and asked them to think carefully before sending. After they thought it through, they wrote in detail and sent it again. The online GM said, "You just contacted me. Come back in a few minutes." Everyone waited anxiously for a few minutes. They looked for the GM, but the GM said, "Wait a few more minutes." When they finally endured the few minutes and were about to send the GM, Gu Fei returned first. Heavenly Wheel of Fire. Gu Fei shouted as soon as he entered. Everyone was dumbfounded and didn't know what to do. When the wheel of fire appeared, no one stood there stupidly anymore. Everyone scattered. So Gu Fei didn't shout, "Surrender." He chased after one of them with his sword and slashed at him. The others looked on dumbfoundedly. Another warrior disappeared. Gu Fei felt strange. Why didn't these people come to help? If the people from the past world accepted the 27149 quest, they could still attack him in the safe zone. Gu Fei didn't know that in the eyes of the players from the past world, 27149 was no longer a quest number. When they saw someone appear with the number 27149, they didn't think, "Ah, I finally found the quest target." Instead, they thought, "Fuck, monster, run." After getting rid of the warrior, Gu Fei's PK points dropped to 10. 17 and 2 a success instantly reduced his PK points by 19. Gu Fei happily left, leaving the group of warriors trembling in the camp. Why did they always receive quests like this? Gu Fei didn't understand. He could only attribute it to his own character. In reality, the 3 warriors that Gu Fei killed were all members of the elite warrior squad that had followed Silvermoon to sweep the area. They had attacked the archer shooting range, taken over the night camp, surrounded the warrior camp, and finally destroyed the main force of Cloud Twilight's formation outside the Mage Academy. They only died when Gu Fei appeared and turned the situation around. They were the squad that had experienced the most battles in today's battle. In addition, they had always been invincible. Naturally, they had accumulated a higher PK points than the others on the battlefield. At this moment, Gu Fei had finally taken advantage of them. When Gu Fei returned for the 4th time after accepting the quest, the warriors finally realized what was going on. This time, Gu Fei didn't seem so scary. Although his magic was still powerful, the problem was that he couldn't hurt anyone apart from his quest target. Even if we have to sacrifice another person, we have to surround this guy and beat him up. The warriors gritted their teeth. Their plans were going according to plan, but man proposes, God disposes. They never expected that Gu Fei wouldn't even bother to enter the main gate. He just stood outside the camp and shouted at the swarm of warriors, "Fire wheels from the heavens." The warriors were furious. In fact, whether it was the people from Past World or Cloud Twilight's group, they were all the same type of people. They were a group of violent people who loved PK. They were all hot-blooded and heroic. In terms of fear, no one on either side was afraid of death. At this moment, Gu Fei's casual attitude when chanting caused everyone's anger to soar. "Even if I have to risk my life, I'll go up and kick this guy." Everyone had the same thought, so they swarmed toward Gu Fei, who was outside the door. Gu Fei was shocked. He didn't expect these muddle-headed guys to suddenly react so fiercely. He hurriedly retreated. All the warriors rushed out of the safe zone. Then, they heard countless, heavenly flame wheel. It came faster than Gu Fei's, and the fire was also fiercer than Gu Fei's. The sorcerers outside the safe zone attacked together. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The warriors returned to the gate from outside. Before they could react, they heard the sound of sword wind. Looking back, one of the warriors had already disappeared under Gu Fei's sword. 4 points left. Gu Fei muttered and ran. Chapter 95. The peerless Gu Fei accepted another quest for his last 4 PK points. He didn't even look at the coordinates and went straight to the warrior camp. When he arrived, he was dumbfounded. The warrior camp was empty, and previous world's people were nowhere to be seen. "Where are they?" Gu Fei asked the people surrounding him. "They logged off," everyone said painfully. Gu Fei understood. No wonder he didn't hear the coordinates change on the way here. He opened the mission bar and sure enough, the coordinates that should have been displayed in the wanted mission bar were written as offline. These people are too evil. Gu Fei thought unhappily. Being able to accept this guy's quest meant that he was online before. Then he should have waited until I killed him before logging off. He didn't have any professionalism at all. Gu Fei sighed. It was very sad that the quest target wasn't online. Because you couldn't cancel the quest and change to another one, this was a rather unreasonable place. Gu Fei stared at the empty warrior camp. The large group of people squatting outside the camp were also at a loss. The other places were still fighting fiercely, but the warriors here were all offline. What kind of explanation was this? Weren't warriors the main force of previous world's guild? The news spread quickly. Not long after, Yun Zhongmu personally arrived at the scene. Sword Demon was no longer participating in their operation. Yun Zhongmu took over and became the first commander. Previous world is done for. Seeing the empty warrior camp, Yun Zhongmu was overjoyed. Gu Fei heard his voice and turned around. The two of them just happened to meet each other's eyes. It was a bit awkward. 8 hours ago, Yun Zhongmu brought a few brothers to assassinate Gu Fei to avenge his brother Unsmiler. 8 hours later, Gu Fei was the key person who helped Yun Zhongmu. From the beginning to the end, it was the same. The opportunity was created because of Gu Fei, and the defeat was also thanks to Gu Fei's timely appearance. Yun Zhongmu didn't know how to face Gu Fei. Suddenly, the words that Zhu Xian shouted at him previously surfaced in his mind: everything has to be dealt with one by one. These words were reasonable. When Yun Zhongmu thought of this, he couldn't help but nod his head. He was just about to walk up and express his thanks to Gu Fei for today's matter, when he saw Gu Fei walk 2 steps forward, enter the soldier camp, and then disappear with a flash of white light. Cloud Twilight stared blankly for a moment, then immediately opened the mission window. Coordinates 27149 had become offline. Now that Gu Fei had been online for more than 8 hours, which was more than enough time for him to work for the day, he informed Sword Ghost and the others before logging off to rest. Of course, Gu Fei's departure did not mean that the battle was over. Moonlit Night City was still a battleground. The situation persisted until the next day, when Gu Fei logged in again. The location was still the warrior camp. The resurrection point behind him was the warrior camp, and the defeat of the former Dust Army was outside the camp gate in front of him. Gu Fei rubbed his eyes, almost unable to believe what he was seeing. It wasn't until he felt a swarm of murderous intent behind him that Gu Fei hurriedly dashed out of the resurrection area. The warriors of the former Dust had learned their lesson this time, and no one chased him out of the camp. "You guys, haven't gone offline?" Gu Fei looked around in surprise. Exhaustion was written all over everyone's face. "We've taken turns to go offline and rest," the guy who was facing Gu Fei replied. "Don't you guys have to go to work?" Gu Fei swallowed these words and didn't say them. He remembered the expressions of the Han family young master and the others when he said this. It seemed to be estrangement. For these guys, the game was their job and career. Gu Fei didn't stay there for too long. Sword Demon and the others had already sent the message. They agreed to return to Cloud City and were going to wait for Gu Fei to come online. "Let's go," Gu Fei said to the people around him. Although it could be said that they didn't know each other at all, at least in the past few days, they were on the same side. These people didn't react for a moment and blurted out, "Where are we going?" "Back to Cloud City," Gu Fei said and suddenly remembered something. "Ah! I almost forgot." As he said this, he glanced back at the warrior camp and rushed back with the Night Streamer sword in his hand. The charging warrior only cared about drooling. After 2 or 3 moves, he died under Gu Fei's sword. The other warriors finally reacted, but unfortunately, Gu Fei had already clapped his hands and left the warrior camp. The warriors beat their chests and stamped their feet, angrily cursing Gu Fei for being shameless and wanting to kill people without any warning. Gu Fei smiled and said goodbye to everyone. At the same time, he didn't forget to express his gratitude to the warriors of the former Dust for helping him. This was from the bottom of his heart. Gu Fei always remembered why he came to Moonlit Night City, because his PK points were too high and he ran away. At this time, Gu Fei finally washed away the lead on his body. After returning to the mission issuance office and handing in the mission, Gu Fei's PK points were finally cleared to 0. After leaving the mission issuance office and seeing that there was no one around, Gu Fei let out a long breath and pulled off the mask on his face. From this moment on, the code name 27149 finally became history. On the way to meet the Sword Demon and the others, Gu Fei saw Xiao Yu and hurriedly sent a message. Xiao Yu was very surprised. "You just came the day before yesterday and you're leaving today." So it was just a mere 2 days. It all felt like a dream. Gu Fei was filled with emotion. For someone as passionate as him, it was inevitable that time passed extremely slowly. And for someone like Xiao Yu who repeatedly did ordinary missions, it was natural that time passed quickly. And for the past 2 days, Xiao Yu had been in Luminous Village researching the cellar of the richest man, Adrian. She was trying to find a way to effectively swindle all the wealth inside. She was completely unaware of the shock that had happened in Moonlit Night City. "When you went offline, did you notice anything unusual?" Gu Fei felt that he was more and more impressed by Xiao Yu. "No," Xiao Yu said. "Where did you go offline?" Gu Fei asked. "Combat Dojo," Xiao Yu said. Gu Fei was relieved. Because the Grand Master of Combat profession was rare, the Combat Dojo didn't become a battlefield. It became the only thing that the other players in Moonlit Night City relied on these days. "What a coincidence, you just had to go offline there," Gu Fei said. The first day I went offline at the warrior camp. But it was really embarrassing. The second day I went back from Luminous Village, I couldn't find the way. Later I asked someone and they told me that I had to go offline at the Combat Dojo," Xiao Yu said. "They didn't tell you why?" Gu Fei asked casually. "Of course it's because it's close." "You're so stupid." Xiao Yu laughed at Gu Fei. Gu Fei was depressed for a long time before asking, "When are you going back to Cloud City?" "Ah. I'm not going back for now. There are so many quests here. I think I can do it for the rest of my life." Go back and ask Sister July if the guild can move to Moonlit Night City. Xiao Yu said. Okay, I'll ask. Gu Fei wiped his sweat. Talking to Xiao Yu was much more exciting than fighting with Silvermoon. After that, he sent a message to Lu Xia and Coward Savior. These two were new friends that Gu Fei had made during his trip to Moonlit Night. He said goodbye to them. Coward Savior wasn't online, but Lu Xia quickly replied, I'm going to Cloud City too. You're going too? You forgot, my friends have already gone. I'm going to meet up with them. Lu Xia said. Oh, then, do you want to go together? Gu Fei asked. Okay. So, Gu Fei told him the location of the meeting. At the entrance of the tavern next to the east gate of the city, Gu Fei saw Sword Demon and the others. What he didn't expect was that Yun Zhongmu was also there, as well as Zhu Xian and a bunch of his brothers. At this time, whether to cover their faces or not was a problem. Don't come over, pretend you don't know us. Sword Demon had obviously seen Gu Fei. Okay. Gu Fei responded. He continued to walk towards the tavern and saw that they just casually glanced at him twice before entering. Before entering, he heard Yun Zhongmu say, It's rare to come to Moonlit Night City. Why don't you stay for a few days and go back already? Life is so boring. Gu Fei said. Suddenly, he received another message. He opened it and saw that it was Han Family Young Master. Do you know how fake your glances were? What's wrong? Gu Fei didn't understand. When you see a stunning face like mine, you have to take a few more glances and be stunned for a bit. Then you'll realize that it's not a dream. That's more realistic. Han Family Young Master said. Gu Fei cried, Your looks aren't enough of an excuse to be disgusting. As soon as the message was sent, Han Family Young Master appeared in front of Gu Fei with a dark face. Don't forget, you're a priest. Gu Fei lightly knocked on the table, I don't even blink when I kill people. Han Family Young Master went out with a dark face again. Outside, Yun Zhongmu and the others were calling Sword Demon brothers. Gu Fei sat in the room and suddenly saw a girl enter the tavern. She stood beside him and looked around. Where? Lu Xia messaged. Gu Fei pulled her cloak, Here. Lu Xia lowered her head, glanced at Gu Fei, and took 2 steps back. Then, Gu Fei received another message. Where are you? I'm here. Here. Didn't I say here? Gu Fei knocked on the table. Lu Xia looked at him in surprise, her face full of disbelief. Gu Fei was quite depressed. Could it be that his appearance was too different from what she imagined? There was no reason. Only Sword Demon could have such a subversive appearance. It was a bit awkward to continue looking at each other like this. Gu Fei coughed. What are you looking at? Lu Xia hurriedly sat next to Gu Fei with a sneaky expression. Did Qinli tell you to wait for me here? What are you talking about? I'm Qinli drunk. Gu Fei said. How is that possible? Lu Xia was shocked. She was about to say something when she suddenly looked confused. Why is there no mission? What mission? Gu Fei asked. A bounty mission. I accepted a bounty for Qinli. Lu Xia said. Oh. Gu Fei understood. Lu Xia didn't see 27149 from him, so she didn't think it was him. He immediately explained, I've already erased my PK points. What? I remember you got 29 points yesterday. How did you erase it so quickly? Lu Xia was shocked. There have been fights everywhere in the city these past few days. There are many people with high PK points. Gu Fei said. Lu Xia understood. That's right, there's a small matter. Can you help me? Gu Fei said. Chapter 96. Outside the tavern, Yun Zhongmu and the others bid farewell to Sword Demon for an hour. In reality, they had only known each other for 2 days, so how much could they say? They said their goodbyes in 5 minutes, but Yun Jongmu refused to leave no matter what. At this time, he was discussing with Sword Demon the best way to add points for thieves. Han family young master laughed coldly, "Don't dawdle here, 27149 won't come." His words exposed Yun Jongmu's thoughts. The group of 10 or so people said that they were here to send off Sword Demon, but their real goal was to see 27,149's true appearance. Gu Fei had appeared quite a bit in Moonlit Night City these past few days, holding a sword and swinging a knife, but his face was always covered. Although countless people admired his elegant demeanor, no one knew his true appearance or name. The only one who knew was Lu Under the Willow, who had just seen Gu Fei's original appearance. After being exposed by Han family young master, they were a bit embarrassed. But luckily, he had endured it for an hour before revealing it, giving them some face. Although Yun Jongmu wasn't happy with Han family young master, he didn't explode this time and could only laugh. "It looks like we won't have the chance to see him. Then, I'll have to trouble brother Sword Demon to thank him on our behalf. Originally, I wanted to personally say it to him yesterday outside the warrior camp, but unfortunately, he went offline, so I didn't get to say it." Sword Demon smiled and nodded, "I will. Then I won't bother you anymore," Yun Jongmu said. Then, he said goodbye terms like, "Come and play when you have time, be careful on the road, keep in touch," and so on. Only then did they truly disperse. Sword Demon's group of 5 entered the tavern, just in time to see Gu Fei moving the table back to his original spot. "What are you doing?" Sword Demon was curious. Sitting against the wall gives me a sense of security. I'm leaving now, I'll move back to my original spot," Gu Fei said. "Are you eavesdropping on us?" The Han family young master sneered. "Ha! I had nothing better to do, so I just listened." Gu Fei laughed as well. He had just learned this from Yun Jongmu. Han family young master noticed Lu Xia, who was sitting together with Gu Fei, and continued, "Ha, you really haven't been idle. You've been so busy for an hour." Unexpectedly, Sword Demon had already gone up to greet Lu Xia. "You're here too." "Ah, I'm here. I'll go with you to Cloud City," Lu Xia said. Yutian Shinming was dumbfounded. He came over and whispered to Gu Fei, "You're amazing. You managed to hook up a girl in just 2 days. How did you do it? Teach this little brother." Gu Fei was depressed. "Little brat, what do you know? Go play somewhere else." Yutian Shinming was very depressed. Gu Fei then introduced the 5 of them to Lu Xia. Other than Han family young master, who was a new ID, Lu Xia had never heard of him before. The rest of them all caused her to gasp in surprise. When it came to Brother Yu, Lu Xia immediately jumped up. "Ah! Brother Yu, you're my idol. Do you know that?" Everyone was stunned. Even Brother Yu didn't know what to do. "What? Even I have fans these days." "Ah! Collecting information and analyzing data. These are my hobbies," Lu Xia exclaimed. "Ha! This girl has a bright future," Brother Yu said to everyone. In reality, Brother Yu's gaming style was quite criticized. Using the knowledge of past online games to describe it, he had no controls, no levels, and no equipment. All he had was theory. In theory, he knew how to add points, how to control, and what techniques to use. If a new player met him, it would be a blessing. However, in actual combat, the power that Brother Yu could contribute was very small. Many people didn't understand why he was obsessed with these things, but he never got tired of it. Every day, he would analyze, discuss with people on the forums. He would post and chat with them. That was how Brother Yu's fame was built. For example, Sword Demon's fame was at its peak in their server. It would definitely be halved in other servers. As for Brother Yu, it was different. The fame that he built up in the forums could be used across the entire server and the entire game. The fame was distributed very evenly. However, fame didn't represent strength. There were always more people who looked down on Brother Yu than those who admired him. Not to mention, there were also people who were passionate about this career. No wonder Lu Xia saw Brother Yu as his idol. Everyone was surprised. After everyone laughed, Lu Xia continued, "You're a mercenary group, right? Can I join as well?" Everyone looked towards Han Family Young Master. According to the definition of the child elite group, Lu Xia didn't have the qualifications. However, the rules were set by Han Family Young Master. It didn't matter to anyone else. So as long as he nodded, it would be considered a success. Gu Fei focused his attention on Yutian Xinming. When Sword Demon first invited him into the group, Brother Yu and unscathed in battle didn't react much. Only Yutian Xinming had a stronger reaction. However, now that a level 24 thief wanted to join the group, Lu Xia didn't have any objections at all. He was smiling like an idiot, his saliva almost dripping out of his mouth. Sad, this was really sad. Gu Fei usually claimed to be an expert, but when he met a girl, his fox's tail would be completely exposed. No wonder the girls in Amethyst reacted so strongly when a male player joined their guild. It was all because this guy ruined the reputation of male players. At this time, Lu Xia also noticed who the important person was from everyone's gaze. He looked towards Han Family Young Master and smiled, so this sister is the group leader. Please, let me join the group too. Sister. The harmonious atmosphere instantly froze. Everyone looked at Han Family Young Master nervously. On his expressionless face, a gentle smile gradually appeared. You want to join the group? Han Family Young Master patted Lu Xia's shoulder and said gently, don't ever think about it. The difference between the content and tone was too big. Lu Xia couldn't react for a moment. Han Family Young Master turned around and called out to everyone, let's go. What's wrong? Lu Xia was still confused. Sword Ghost heaved a deep sigh and went out. Unscathed in battle giggled and went out as well. You still have a long way to go on the path of gathering information, Brother Yu said to Lu Xia in a serious tone. Don't worry, leave it to me. Do you have QQ? We. Kids, go play somewhere else. Before Yutian Xinming could finish his sentence, he was already chased away by Gu Fei. Gu Fei was also worried, can't you tell that he's a guy? I admit that he doesn't look like one, but you can at least tell from his voice. He didn't stop talking when he entered the door. Ah. Yeah, I didn't pay much attention. Lu Xia said. Gu Fei was speechless. If this mistake was made by Xiao Yu, then it was inevitable. Lu Xia didn't look like someone who would be so stupid. I'll go apologize to him. Lu Xia wanted to chase after him. Forget it. Gu Fei pulled her, but he was one step too late. Lu Xia had already rushed out. Gu Fei chased after him and saw Lu Xia bowing and apologizing to Han Family Young Master. Han Family Young Master, on the other hand, continued to smile warmly. I'm not that narrow-minded, Han Family Young Master said warmly, this kind of thing happens to me often. I'm already used to it. You can't join the group because you're not strong enough. Our group. Han Family Young Master looked around and finally pointed at Gu Fei, you should know him better, right? He's the weakest in our group. If you want to join the group, you have to at least have the same strength as him. Lu Xia was dumbfounded, looks like I really don't need to think about it anymore. Han Family Young Master nodded, that's why I said that too. Yutian Xinming and the others who were listening at the side whispered to each other. Is it real or fake? Does he really not mind? Unscathed in battle said. Fake, it must be fake. Look at his smile, Brother Yu said with certainty. Sword Demon, you're the most familiar with him. What do you think? Yutian Xinming asked. Half fake, half real. Sword Demon said. What do you mean? Yutian Xinming asked. With Lu Xia's level, he won't accept him no matter what. But it just so happened that Lu Xia was unlucky. He acted as if it was because of this reason and took the opportunity to vent his anger. That's probably his mentality. Gu Fei also floated over. Sword Demon looked at Gu Fei in surprise. I didn't know that you know him so well. I can't help it. Gu Fei sighed, his personality is too obvious. Why can't I tell? Yutian Shenming scratched his head. What does a brat know? I've eaten more salt than you've eaten rice. Gu Fei said. Yutian Shenming was extremely depressed. Alright, let's go. Seeing that Lu Xia and Han family young master had finished talking, everyone finally went on their way together. I must join your mercenary group. Lu Xia and Gu Fei walked together and whispered. So you still haven't given up? Gu Fei said. Of course. Good luck. Gu Fei said. You're so amazing. How did you do it? Lu Xia asked. 20 years of hard work. I still haven't stopped. Gu Fei said. What? Lu Xia didn't understand. Kung Fu. Gu Fei said. You're saying that you're so good at PK because you've practiced Kung Fu. During the battle with the boundless Mang, Lu Xia hid on the side and watched the entire process of Gu Fei's battle. This battle wasn't like Gu Fei's usual one-on-one battles, where it ended in 2 or 3 moves. Lu Xia watched from a spectator's point of view for a long time. He already felt that Gu Fei was different from ordinary people. Gu Fei nodded. Can I learn? Lu Xia asked. If you really like it, I don't mind teaching you. If your goal is to be like me in the game after learning it, then you don't have to. You don't have that much time. Gu Fei said frankly. Gu Fei had practiced martial arts for 20 years. How could the amount of gold he had accumulated in these 20 years be compared to ordinary people? Learning martial arts was already his study, his career, and the focus of his life revolved around it. Moreover, there was also the indescribable talent. If an ordinary person used their spare time to practice martial arts, to reach Gu Fei's current achievements, 40 years? 60 years? The real possibility was that he wouldn't be able to reach it in his entire life. Chapter 97. After a 3-hour-long journey, the group finally returned to Cloud City. On the way, Yutian Shenming was the one who was the most restless, thinking of ways to show his face in front of Lu Xia. Unfortunately, there weren't even any monsters on the mountain roads of Black Dragon Mountain. Yutian Shenming couldn't use the best way to show his face in the game, which made things difficult for him. Along the way, there were more than 40 cold jokes. Childish, very childish. Gu Fei didn't approve of Yutian Shenming's actions, so he wanted to avoid him and walk at the back. But Lu Xia was with this group of people, so it was obvious who he would walk with. Where there was Gu Fei, there was Lu Xia. Where there was Lu Xia, there was Yutian Shenming. Along the way, there were more than 40 cold jokes, and Gu Fei didn't miss any of them. Finally arrived. The moment he stepped into the gate of Cloud City, Gu Fei was so excited that he couldn't control himself. He finally didn't have to listen to cold jokes. Imperial Sky Shenming had clearly been waiting for this moment for a long time. He spoke to Lu Xia in a low voice. You're new to our Cloud City and are not familiar with the people and the place. Why don't I bring you around to get you to know the way? This fellow had long wanted to leave everyone behind and meet Lu Xia in private. Unexpectedly, Lu Xia smiled and said, there's no need. I have a lot of friends in Cloud City. So it's like that. Then why don't you introduce your friends to me? Yutian Shenming said. And so, Gu Fei and the others watched as Yutian Shenming shamelessly followed Lu Xia. Send me a message. Lu Xia specifically told Gu Fei before he left. Gu Fei nodded, he knew what Lu Xia was referring to. The two of them went further and further away. Gu Fei could vaguely hear Yutian Shenming urging beside Lu Xia, don't bother Qianli, just look for me if you need anything, although Gu Fei did not have that kind of feelings towards Lu Xia like Yutian Shenming, he could not help but want to say to Yutian Shenming, "Damn you, shall we disperse?" Han family young master asked everyone. "Disperse?" Sword Demon said. "If anyone wants to drink, you can come with me." The Han family young master walked toward the tavern. The others did not even look at him and went their separate ways. The child elite group would only gather together at 2 times. One was when they were on a mission, and the other was when they were drinking at Little Ray's bar. Normally, when they leveled up, they would fight on their own. Gu Fei expressed that it was strange because the other players he saw were all thinking of ways to team up with others to level up. The explanation given by Sword Demon was that it was the experience of an expert. Teaming up with others to grind levels is indeed more efficient, and you'll suffer less as well. However, people who level up in this way will most likely develop a dependence on their teammates. As an expert, you must not have this kind of dependence. You must have the temperament and ability to be independent in any environment. Gu Fei was very shocked, not because of what Sword Demon said. As a martial artist, Gu Fei naturally knew this. He was shocked because of Sword Demon's serious attitude. As for the entertainment of the game, it was clear that Sword Demon did not hold the mentality of entertainment. This game seemed to contain his pursuit and ideals. At this point in the game, Gu Fei would definitely feel inferior. Gu Fei watched as the experts disappeared from his sight one by one before turning around to look at them. At the same time, someone beside him was already calling him, Qianli. Gu Fei turned around and saw the reborn Amethyst July and Luoluo. "Hey, long time no see," Gu Fei greeted. "Yeah. What have you been busy with these 2 days?" Luoluo said with a smile, seemingly pointing at something. This was something that Gu Fei had already expected. Gu Fei had been careful enough to conceal his identity. But no matter how hard he tried, some clues would always be able to escape the eyes of those who were observant. The limelight of 27,149 in Moonlit Night City had long been exposed on the forum. For the majority of people, this could not mean anything. But for the people around Gu Fei who knew him but didn't know that he was 27,149, this was a clue. After all, Cloud City and Moonlit Night City had never been visited by players. After all, there was not much difference between the 2 main cities. Who would spend 3 hours walking from one place to another? Qianli left Cloud City in a drunken stupor and appeared in Moonlit Night City as 27149. This alone could almost prove that Gu Fei was 27149. Although most people didn't know that such a person had left Cloud City to go to Moonlit Night City, it was an exception to the reborn Amethyst. Don't forget that Gu Fei went to Moonlit Night City with Little Yu. Seeing the way July and Luoluo looked at him, Gu Fei could already conclude that they thought that he was 27,149. However, Gu Fei was already prepared for this. He smiled and answered Luoluo's question, "I went to Moonlit Night City with Little Yu for a quest." "Oh. What kind of quest is so attractive to you?" Luoluo's smile did not change. Obviously, only a simple and honest quest maniac like Little Yu would spend 3 hours to move to another main city for a small quest. If Gu Fei used this as a reason, it would not be justifiable. Unfortunately, Gu Fei had something valuable, the chain quest. It was the most glamorous quest mode, and many people wanted to accept it but couldn't. For this, not to mention spending 3 hours to go to another main city, even if it was 30 hours, there would still be people fighting to do it. As expected, when July and Luoluo heard the words, chain quest, their expressions changed. First, it was shocking that he could complete the chain quest. Second, it also meant that Gu Fei leaving Cloud City for Moonlit Night City, which meant that he was 27,149, was not valid. This was because Gu Fei had a solid reason. "Moonlit Night City, is it good?" July suddenly asked. "It's messy, too messy. The people there are all PvP maniacs. They just say a few words and immediately start fighting. These 2 days, more than a dozen guilds are fighting in the city, killing so much that no players dare to walk on the streets. Do you know the mage who killed Non-Smiler in our Cloud City? That person also ran to Moonlit Night City. I saw him, but unfortunately, he still covered his face. Gu Fei spoke without thinking. July and Luoluo looked at each other. Gu Fei was also calculating in his heart, now that his PvP value has been wiped clean, there is absolutely no clear evidence to prove that he is the previous 27149. In the future, if he does this kind of thing, he should pay attention to the PvP rules and not attract too much attention. It's just that the players who carry the code 27149 will suffer. 27149 is just the number issued by the quest, indicating that this is the 27149 wanted quest in the parallel world. From now on, the PvP players with this code will more or less have a little trouble. The three of them were silent for a while, and the atmosphere was a little awkward. After a while, July changed the topic. What about Little Rain? Did she come back with you? No, she is still in the quest, and also asked if you can also move the guild to Moonlit Night City. Gu Fei smiled. This Little Rain. July smiled bitterly and shook her head. Right. Gu Fei suddenly slapped his head, as if remembering something. I know a girl who might be willing to join your guild. Your guild? July said, don't forget, you're also a member of the guild. You should say our guild. Didn't I wait for you to reach 20 people before leaving? Gu Fei said. Oh, no wonder you are so eager to introduce people to the guild. July said. Gu Fei smiled foolishly, neither admitting nor denying it. When will you call people over to let us get to know them first? July asked after a sigh. Right away. Gu Fei said, what about you guys? Do you have time right now? If I don't have time, would I be able to chat with you for so long? July said. Gu Fei heard that July's tone wasn't right, as if she was unhappy. For a moment, he was stunned, not knowing if he should call Lu Xia over. July also immediately realized that she had lost her composure. After calming down, she returned to her usual lukewarm appearance. Call her over. We will wait for her at the tavern next to here. Gu Fei nodded and sent a message to Lu Xia. The three of them entered the tavern and found a place to sit down. You guys sit first, I will go to the warehouse to organize some things. I will be back soon. July sat for a while before standing up again. Seeing July leave the tavern, Gu Fei hurriedly asked Luoluo, is July angry? You can see that. Yes, of course, you are in such a hurry to leave the guild. Of course she will be angry. Actually, I am very angry as well. Luoluo said. Gu Fei was at a loss. When he entered the guild, they were the ones who were angry. Now that he could finally leave, they were also the ones who were angry. A woman's mind was really like an illusion, messy in the wind. It could be compared to the most complicated and varied moves in Kung Fu. I say, why are you in such a hurry to leave the guild? Luoluo said. Am I in a hurry? How am I in a hurry? Gu Fei said. You aren't the only one who can see through other people's minds. Other people can also see through you. Luoluo said. I am not in a hurry. It's just, isn't it your wish to leave Amethyst? Gu Fei said. We want you to leave because you are a male player. We don't want you to leave because you are a drunk Qianli. Luoluo said. Gu Fei frowned, what's the difference? Without waiting for Luoluo to answer, the tavern door opened again. Gu Fei saw Lu Xia coming in and quickly waved to her. She had just left here not long ago, so naturally she came quickly. But when he saw Yutian Shinming behind her, Gu Fei had the urge to pull out his sword. Qianli. Yutian Shinming greeted Gu Fei with a cheeky smile and then saw Luoluo. He was startled and said, another pretty girl. Look. Luoluo said, this is the difference between a male player and a drunk Qianli. Butterfly Knot, the recent chapters are mainly transitions from talk shows. Chapter 98. I see. Gu Fei looked at Yutian Shinming, unwilling to admit that he was the same type of person as him. Luo Luo continued, this is the reason why our attitude towards you has changed. As for whether or not you want to stay in the guild, it depends on whether or not you're happy. You can decide for yourself. If it was me, if I wasn't happy, I wouldn't stay in a guild. If that's the case, then I'll stay. Gu Fei smiled. Saying that he was happy was a bit of an exaggeration. Guilds didn't exist in his mind at all. He didn't want to join a guild and play with a group of people, nor did he think that staying in a guild would affect him in any way. It wasn't a question of whether or not he was happy. Previously, when Gu Fei saw that he had incurred the displeasure of the other members of the guild because of him, he naturally wanted to leave. Now that he saw that this problem no longer existed and that he would incur the displeasure of others if he left, Gu Fei naturally chose to stay. Hee, this isn't very good. Luo Luo laughed. Gu Fei shrugged indifferently, stood up and said, then I'll be leaving first. I'm the one who introduced this young lady to you. Gu Fei pointed at Lu Xia. Hello, I'm Lu Xia. Lu Xia smiled as he walked over. I'm Yutian Shinming. Ah, damn, Qianli, what are you doing? Let go of me. Yutian Shinming also wanted to come over, but was caught by Gu Fei. But in the end, the archer's strength was still a level higher. Imperial Heaven Divine Cry struggled a few times. Gu Fei's strength was not enough to shake him off, and in the end Imperial Heaven Divine Cry broke free. I'm looking for you to research something about mages. Gu Fei said to Yutian Shinming. Oh. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Yutian Shinming said loudly. It was unknown who he was talking to. Let's find a place to fight while researching. Gu Fei said. Ah. Yutian Shinming looked at Gu Fei, then looked at the two girls on the other side. He seemed to be making a difficult choice. Finally, he walked towards the willow tree. I'll go with Qianli first. Let's keep in touch later. Lu Xia nodded. Yutian Shinming followed Gu Fei out of the tavern and immediately asked, how do you know so many pretty girls? As he spoke, he began to count with his fingers. 1, 2, 3. I've already seen 3 of them, and they all seem to be quite familiar with you. Quick, tell me in detail. Even if I know him, I'm not familiar with him. Gu Fei said. You are too humble. Qianli, you are too humble. Yutian Shinming said. Then tell me how you know him. Gu Fei nodded and suddenly threw 2 gold coins on the ground. Hey, girls! Gu Fei shouted. The 2 female players who were walking in front of him turned around. You dropped your money. Gu Fei pointed at the ground. The 2 girls looked at the ground, shook their heads and said, it's not ours. That can't be, I saw it fall from your bodies. Gu Fei said. That's impossible. The 2 were stunned. The gold coins were all in Doraemon's pocket. It was impossible for it to fall outside. Really? Then did I see wrong? Gu Fei walked forward and picked up the 2 gold coins. The 2 girls continued to look at him. Do you want one? Gu Fei asked. The 2 hurriedly shook their heads. So Gu Fei put it in his pocket and casually left. See, that's how we know each other. Gu Fei said to Yutian Shinming. Yutian Shinming was speechless. If you want to know a girl, you have to go up and strike up a conversation. If you can talk, won't you know each other? This is the same principle as the most primitive way of asking people time. But it requires a bit of investment. If those 2 girls were a bit more shameless, these 2 gold coins would have gone into their pockets. Gu Fei lectured Yutian Shinming. They aren't shameless, but looking at you now, it's like you're looking at an idiot. Yutian Shinming turned his head. I'm just giving you a demonstration. I'm not looking for results. You study it. This is all knowledge. Gu Fei said. Are you usually like this? Yu Shinming was suspicious. Aren't you a teacher? What's wrong with being a teacher? You students can have puppy love, not to mention teachers. Gu Fei retorted. Teacher. I don't think you're honest at all. Yu Shinming mumbled. Gu Fei teased him for a long time. Seeing that the two had already walked out of Cloud City, he asked Yu Shinming, where is the best place for a mage to fight monsters? Cloud Basin. The monsters move slowly and have low defense. Yu Shinming said. Where do we go? Gu Fei asked. This way. Yu Shinming led the way. Half an hour later, the two were lost. It should be here. Yu Shinming mumbled and took out a small book. Gu Fei was startled, thinking that he was possessed by Xiao Yu. He moved closer to take a look. It was a small book, but the contents were different. Xiao Yu's book recorded the relationship between the NPCs in the game and some clues about quests. But Yu Shinming's book only had coordinates, NPC coordinates, and coordinates of locations. Let me see. Gu Fei snatched the book and flipped to the coordinates of Cloud Basin. Think about it, Cloud Basin wasn't a dot, but a large area. Using a coordinate obviously wouldn't be enough. So, in Yu Shinming's book, the coordinates of Cloud Basin were marked on 2 pages. What is this? Gu Fei's heart trembled. He had been deceived. This Yu Shinming's IQ wasn't high. He actually wanted to ask him about mages. Wasn't this just humiliating himself? The Cloud Mist Basin is surrounded by these coordinates. Why can't I find it? Imperial Heaven Shinming took back his little book and held it tightly in his hands as he looked around. Gu Fei didn't have any hope in him, so he sent a message to Brother Yu. Brother Yu pointed out the direction in a few words. In the end, Gu Fei complained about Yu Shinming's situation. Brother Yu laughed, don't count on him. He's an idiot. Even in the original online game, he couldn't find the coordinates, let alone in this simulated environment. Can he tell the directions? Yu Tian, which way is east? Gu Fei asked. Probably that way. Yu Shinming said, pointing to the south. Gu Fei sighed. It was just as Brother Yu predicted. How could a person who couldn't tell the directions find the coordinates? Then, with Gu Fei leading the way, the two soon arrived at the Cloud Basin. The Cloud Basin was indeed the most suitable place for mages to level up. There were mages everywhere, and then there were groups of monsters chasing after them. The mage closest to Gu Fei and Yu Shinming was running in a Z shape. After a few steps, the monsters behind him had already formed a group. He immediately turned around and cast a heavenly fire wheel. After blasting the monsters, they were almost at him, so he quickly ran and formed another group. Gu Fei looked around. Some were running in a Z shape, some were running in an S shape, and some were running in an L shape. In short, each one was more arrogant than the other. The most arrogant one was the one next to Gu Fei. At this time, there was no need to find the way. Yu Shinming's bitter expression was gone. He was in high spirits. He rubbed his chin with one hand and used the other to point at the mages around him and evaluate them one by one. Damn, this idiot. The distance is too wide. Half of the monsters are already following us. Hey, this idiot is also an idiot. The monsters haven't formed a group yet and they're already exploding. Damn. Fireball after fireball. What kind of fucking strategy is this? Ha, dumbfounded. Brother, you're one step too far. You've exceeded the maximum distance of magic. Yu Shinming immediately shouted. TSK TSK. Unsightly, unsightly. Yu Shinming muttered arrogantly. In the end, he asked Gu Fei, what do you want to research by bringing me here? You're not just trying to insult my eyes, are you? Gu Fei calmed himself down and said, I want to try to integrate magic into my martial arts. I think it might be more interesting. Martial arts? What kind of martial arts? Yutian Shinming was confused. My martial arts. Gu Fei brandished his knife. Stop joking. Yutian Shinming laughed and slapped Gu Fei's knife to the side. What martial arts? You've read too many wuxia novels. Gu Fei didn't say anything. The fire baptism in his hands suddenly slashed at Yutian Shinming. What are you doing? Yutian Shinming was frightened. Even if he didn't understand Gu Fei's skills, he still knew about Gu Fei's achievements. Moreover, he was an archer who was the worst at close combat. He didn't doubt the outcome of a PK with Gu Fei in this situation. Gu Fei didn't answer. He only chased after Yutian Shinming's neck with the blade. Yutian Shinming dodged left and right for a long time. Finally, he noticed that Gu Fei's knife was still 3 centimeters away from his neck. No matter what position he took, the knife was like a part of his body and would always appear there. Yutian Shinming suddenly stopped moving. Gu Fei's knife also stopped 3 centimeters away from Yutian Shinming's neck. Extreme control. This is the extreme control that Sword Demon talked about. Yutian Shinming shouted. Gu Fei didn't say anything. He really couldn't communicate with this group of online game otakus. It was too difficult to let them understand his magical martial arts. For the time being, let them think of it as a control. That's it. How can I integrate magic into it? Gu Fei asked shamelessly. This. You want to use magic in close combat? Yutian Shinming suddenly understood. This is too heaven-defying. Using magic in close combat? How about it? It's very interesting, right? Gu Fei said. This. It seems a little. Yutian Shinming said in a daze. The technique of using magic in close combat. This is something that even I haven't studied before. You haven't studied it either. Gu Fei was quite disappointed. When a mage gets close, it usually means death. I've only studied a few techniques to increase my survivability in close combat. This. Yutian Shinming said as his expression became absent-minded. What is this? Gu Fei asked. Yutian Shinming's face was full of tears. Why didn't I choose to be a mage this time? Why didn't I think of this earlier? Chapter 99. Yutian Shinming was very regretful, very regretful. He thought that his mage skills were already unparalleled in the world, and it would be unfair to use mages to compete with others in the game. That was why he gave up the mage class in the parallel world, without any hesitation, even ignoring the fact that choosing a mage in a holographic simulation was a completely new experience. This had made him feel regret before, but it wasn't as strong as what he was feeling now. At this moment, he was about to help Gu Fei with a new research project. Many mage characteristics, controls, and techniques appeared in his mind, and he naturally conceived many new mage battle styles. The fire that had been extinguished in Yutian Shinming's heart burned again, and it grew stronger and stronger. Until the dancing flames spelled out the word, regret. My career as a mage isn't finished yet. Yutian Shinming yelled at the top of his lungs in the leveling area. The players who heard the yell were all surprised. Why was this archer yelling about his career as a mage? Is there a need to be so excited? Gu Fei was at a loss. Just like how others didn't understand Kung Fu, he sometimes couldn't understand the mentality of these online players. Sword Demon was like this, and so was Yutian Shinming. Okay. Let's start. Yutian Shinming was even more excited than Gu Fei. Gu Fei nodded. Yutian Shinming first summarized the theory. Currently, level 30 mages have level 0 Fireball, level 6 Resistant Ring of Fire, level 12 Spell Mastery, level 18 Double Flame Flash, level 24 Falling Flame Wheel, and level 30 Rapid Fireball. Spell Mastery is a passive skill, so don't worry about it. What you can use in battle are the other 5. Gu Fei nodded. His Moon Knight robe had the Spell Mastery +1 attribute. He didn't understand it at the time and wanted to ask Heng Xiao, but the other party was busy and didn't have time to answer. Later, after learning all the skills in the Mage Academy, he read the explanation of spell mastery and had a general understanding of it. The passive skill spell mastery had two effects. The first was to increase the character's mana coefficient. In addition, it also increased the percentage of magic damage. Unlike other skills, this passive skill displayed the skill's level and not its proficiency. Beginner level, level 1. Strengthens spell coefficient and spell damage by 6%. Players could only go to the academy to upgrade their skills after reaching a certain level. Because Gu Fei had only learned spell mastery at level 31, it was displayed as level 3 at the start. Spell amplification coefficient and spell damage were both 18%. The Moonlight Spirit Robe showed spell proficiency +1, so Gu Fei guessed that it should be increasing the level of spell proficiency, allowing Gu Fei's spell damage to further increase. Coupled with the high magic damage of the Night Streak Sword, Gu Fei's Heaven's Descent Fire Wheel, which he had zero experience with, instantly killed the warriors of the past who were enjoying the King's command. The passive skill, XX Mastery, was not unique to mages. A thief's dagger mastery, an archer's crossbow mastery, and so on, respectively determined the specialties of each class. Therefore, although each class did not force the use of a certain weapon, they had their own specialties. This was something that any ordinary player already knew. Only Gu Fei, who hadn't learned the skill and hadn't researched the game's information, knew. At this time, Yutian Shinming continued to say, Resistance Ring of Fire is a defensive skill. Originally, mages would try their best to pull away from others to fight, so this skill is relatively useless. However, if you use a close combat method, this skill is very useful. Although the damage isn't high, it's a continuous skill. If you can stick to me like how you just stuck your sword to me, you might be able to use this skill to kill me. I still have to calculate the specifics. What's your current proficiency? 0. Gu Fei said. Damn. Yutian Shinming rolled his eyes, that won't burn you to death. Your proficiency is too low and the damage is too little. You should use it more when you have nothing to do. There's no other shortcut to burning skills. Gu Fei nodded. However, during the duration of the skill, how do you last until the opponent burns you to death and doesn't hack you to death? This is very difficult. Yutian Shinming said. Add agility to make your body more nimble. Gu Fei said. Yutian Shinming was momentarily speechless. If it was in the previous online games, dodging attacks would be calculated by the system. Adding points and equipment would solve everything. However, in the parallel world, dodging and other actions needed to be completed by the players themselves. Whether or not a miss was determined by the player's reaction. Players with fast reactions also needed to add points to make dodging actions fast enough. This was the purpose of adding points. Therefore, in the parallel world, the character's data didn't have any hit and dodge attributes. In the game's disgusting advertising slogan, this was called, "The initiative is in your hands." In theory, it was simple, but players needed a long time to adapt. He believed that by the time the game matured, the players would all become experts in fighting, and each of them would have their own specialties. Of course, this was all in the future. Right now, most players were still adapting. Add agility to make your body more nimble. To Yutian Shinming, this was just empty theory. Seeing the disdain on Yutian Shinming's face, Gu Fei didn't explain. He stretched his body and said, "Let me show you." Gu Fei flashed in front of a monster and shouted, "Resistance Ring of Fire, go!" Resistance Ring of Fire was also an instant skill. It didn't need time. As soon as the command was given, it immediately spun around Gu Fei's body. Then, he heard the monster scream and fall at Gu Fei's feet. Yutian Shinming's face paled. "Your magic damage is too high. You can even instantly kill a defensive skill. What's going on? Didn't you have zero experience? Where did you get such high damage from?" Gu Fei handed the Dark Knight lightsaber to Yutian Shinming. Yutian Shinming didn't understand and took a look at the stats. He immediately had the urge to take the sword and go offline, never to talk to Gu Fei again. Where did this come from? Yutian Shinming stuck out his tongue and screamed. Quest chain reward. Gu Fei calmly said. Quest chain reward? Isn't that too overpowered? No wonder your magic damage is so high. Your physical damage is also so overpowered. I'll be insta-killed if you stab me. This. Yutian Shinming couldn't say anything. I can't insta-kill you. My sword coefficient isn't high enough. Gu Fei said. Coefficient, how do you explain this? Yutian Shinming asked. Oh, this. Gu Fei told him about what Hengchen Yixiao had told him. He was originally afraid that he wouldn't remember it clearly enough and wouldn't be able to express the meaning, but Yutian Shinming was a legendary expert. His comprehension in the game was equivalent to Gu Fei's talent in martial arts. He didn't even hear 2 words before he understood what was going on and yelled out, so it's like this. Even though he was an in-game expert, there wasn't any equipment with a coefficient requirement in the game. So, even though he could see the plus 18% coefficient in the crossbow proficiency skill, he didn't understand what this coefficient meant and couldn't figure out what this data was used for. So you're saying that equipment with a coefficient requirement should be considered high-level equipment? Yutian Shinming looked at the sword. From the magic damage of the current staff, this sword should be at least level 50 to 60 equipment. In other words, level 50 to 60 characters can reach this coefficient requirement by adding points. Otherwise, wouldn't there be no point in setting this coefficient? What do you want to say? Gu Fei asked. What I mean is that you're currently level 30 and you're all in agility. You don't have a high magic coefficient to display the full magic damage of this sword. But, if you don't use it to its full potential, how can a spell with 0 proficiency be so powerful? What's going on? Where did you get the magic coefficient? Yutian Shinming mumbled. Magic proficiency level 3, only 18%. I have a +1 magic proficiency clothing, so it's only 24%. Mages should have some magic coefficient, right? Gu Fei said. This sword requires a 170% magic coefficient. A mage's natural coefficient wouldn't directly help you pick up this level 50 plus equipment, right? The point that affects the magic coefficient is definitely intelligence, at most spirit. In any case, it definitely can't be agility. You haven't added any of these. With the 30 intelligence and spirit that comes with level 30, how many magic coefficients can you give? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Yutian Shinming mumbled as he calculated. Suddenly, he had a thought. Wait, you said your clothing has a +1 magic proficiency. What clothing? Gu Fei immediately took off the moonlight spirit robe on his body and showed it to Yutian Shinming. Damn, where did this clothing come from? This has to be level 60 or 70 clothing. Yutian Shinming was stunned again. It's also from the quest chain reward. The clothing adds 20 intelligence. This doesn't determine anything. Magic proficiency +1. So, this +1 probably doesn't refer to raising the passive skill magic proficiency by 1 level. Yutian Shinming said. Then what does it mean? The coefficient is expressed in the form of a percentage. Then if +1 is equal to +100%, wouldn't it? If that's the case, then the clothing will help you increase the magic coefficient by 100%. That means you've reached the magic coefficient requirement of this sword and can display its power. Yutian Shinming's eyes were bright and spirited. His expression was as if Columbus had discovered a new continent. Quick! Try it! Yutian Shinming rolled up Gu Fei's moonlight spirit robe and returned the night streamer to him. He pointed at a monster and said, Go! Gu Fei accepted the order. He grabbed the night streamer and rushed to the side of the monster with bare arms, summoning Resistance Ring of Fire. As expected, this time the monster cried out strangely from the Ring of Fire, but it didn't fall. It was obvious that Gu Fei's magic damage had greatly decreased. Waha! I really am an expert among mages. I've solved the mystery of your magic so quickly. Yutian Shinming laughed. The surrounding players looked at rare animals again. This archer said he was a mage. Idiot. Chapter 100. After verifying how Gu Fei had displayed the magic damage of the Dark Knight Flowing Light Sword, Imperial Divine Cry felt that it was of great significance. He had a satisfied look on his face, and his spirit was even higher. He continued to explain to Gu Fei the many techniques of a mage in battle. All of this was the conclusion of his past experience in the game. Although all the games had their own merits, there were not many variations when it came to the general design of the sorcerer class. There were only some differences in the skills, but the characteristics of the sorcerer were still the same. Therefore, all he had to do was to select the usable sorcerer skills based on the parallel world. The few spells that had appeared in the parallel world so far were as common as they could be. It was not hard to imagine how thoroughly the players had studied these skills. The Imperial Heaven Divine Cry listed out the characteristics of a few spells, regardless of whether Gu Fei could remember them or not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were listed out. Gu Fei was actually fascinated as he listened. The reason why he was suddenly interested was because these methods and techniques sounded like a new type of martial arts to him. In the past, the sorcerer's skills were all used by fingers dancing on the keyboard and mouse. Gu Fei was not interested in that. However, in the parallel world, the characters had to observe, move, and release everything on their own. This was obviously very different. However, after Yutian Shinming talked about the theory and dragged a small monster over for Gu Fei to practice, the two of them were quickly stunned. The steps that Yutian Shinming asked for and the timing of the attack were all simulated by Gu Fei. This was already enough to surprise Yutian Shinming, but what surprised them the most was that the final application of the skill failed. Perhaps this was not a failure, but the skill obviously did not achieve the effect that Yutian Shinming had expected in the parallel world. Yutian Shinming neglected a very real problem in the parallel world. The players had lost the omniscient view that they had in the previous online games. The players here were no longer facing a single monitor. Instead, they were looking at 6 different directions. This seems like there are still a lot of places that need to be modified. Yutian Shinming muttered, "You can't see what's behind you, can you? Damn, this is troublesome." Before Gu Fei could say anything, Yutian Shinming was already going crazy. "There are some things that I need to try out myself, but now. Fuck." Yutian Shinming threw the longbow in his hand to the ground. "Fuck archers. It doesn't matter. Just tell me these techniques and I'll try them myself," Gu Fei said. In fact, Gu Fei was the expert in observing, positioning, and seizing the opportunity to launch an attack in such a realistic situation. However, when he saw Yutian Shinming's "I'm the best in the world" look whenever he mentioned mages, he could not bear to provoke him further. To be honest, Yutian Shinming did not choose to be a mage this time, which might be something to be thankful for. The brand new game mode made many of the techniques that could be used when typing on the keyboard unreliable. Players were faced with researching new battle styles and techniques. In this aspect, Gu Fei, a newbie in the game, had become an expert. Physicists were usually divided into theoretical physicists and experimental physicists based on their focus. The players in the game often had similar differences. For example, Brother Yu was an extreme theorist. However, in the parallel world, the players were forced to be divided into 2 groups due to their own abilities and adaptability. Former experts like Sword Demon could only be considered theoretical physicists in this brand new game mode. Gu Fei, on the other hand, was an experimental scholar. Moreover, he was a top experimental scholar. The relationship between Yutian Shinming and Gu Fei was like that of a theoretical physicist and an experimental physicist. One provided the theory, while the other put the theory into practice. It was just that in the parallel world, experiments were much more difficult than theories. In the current situation, some of Yu Tianxinming's theories had already been proven to be failures, and Gu Fei himself was asking to take on the role of a theorist. The two left the leveling area and returned to Cloud City. Yu Tianxinming led Gu Fei to an unusually lively street. On both sides of the wide street were players sitting on the ground. In front of them were cloth with all kinds of things on it. Most of them were equipment and raw materials for professions. "There's actually a place like this," Gu Fei exclaimed. He had seen a lot of street stalls, but he did not know that there was such a street with so many stalls. The main city was very big. Gu Fei traveled between two places every day, so there were many places that he did not visit. "Why not leave it at the auction house?" Gu Fei asked Yu Tianxinming. "The auction house system charges fees based on the price you set, calculated by the number of days. So, if you leave an unsold item there, you will definitely lose money," Yu Tianxinming said. "I see." Gu Fei nodded. Yu Tianxinming looked at him. "I always suspected that you were a noob, but now, I believe it." Gu Fei smiled and did not think much of it. From the perspective of online gaming, he was indeed a noob, and a very unmotivated noob. He had been playing for a while, but his knowledge of online gaming had not improved at all. Yu Tianxinming finally stopped in front of a seemingly large stall. The goods in this stall were more dazzling than the other players' stalls. Gu Fei glanced at the owner and immediately understood. It was a handsome man in a white robe, but it was obvious that he was an NPC. The smile on his face was too professional. Yu Tianxinming bought a large number of small books and quills. Gu Fei now knew the origins of these things and couldn't help but sigh. Gu Fei could imagine what Yu Tianxinming was going to do with these things. He couldn't help but admire Yu Tianxinming's deep knowledge in the game. Just focusing on mages required so many books to record. How many martial arts manuals could that be? Gu Fei calculated. "You're going to write all of your techniques in these books?" Gu Fei still asked. Yu Tianxinming nodded. "I don't think you'll be able to remember all of them verbally." Gu Fei nodded. "Then I'll have to trouble you." Yu Tianxinming's eyes suddenly lit up. "Do you think these techniques of mine can be sold for money? Is there movable type printing in the game?" Gu Fei asked. Yu Tianxinming's eyes instantly dimmed. These techniques that were going to be largely eliminated in the parallel world couldn't even make use of this little bit of residual heat. Gu Fei patted him on the shoulder. "When I'm done, we can start a class. I'll give you half of the tuition fees. Will that work?" Yu Tianxinming was startled. "This is my profession." Gu Fei smiled. "Okay. Then it's a deal. I'll go write the teaching materials for you now." Yu Tianxinming waved the small books in his hand. "I'll walk around and see what the source of students is like," Gu Fei said. "Fuck." Yu Tianxinming cursed and left the trading street first. Gu Fei, on the other hand, wanted something new and continued to wander the streets. Listening to the players haggle, he felt like he was in a market, just that the air was fresher. Violent flight. As he walked, he suddenly heard someone shout. Gu Fei already knew who it was from this strange name. He turned around and saw Shi Xiaotian wearing a bandit's cloak. His face was covered, and he was squatting in a corner sneakily. There was also a shabby stall in front of him. Gu Fei looked around vigilantly. It didn't seem like there were any traps, so he carefully walked up to the stall. "What are you doing here?" Gu Fei was puzzled. He suspected that this guy was up to something again. "I'm selling stuff." Shi Xiaotian pushed the stall in front of him. Gu Fei glanced at it. They were all shabby trinkets. He didn't even need appraisal to know that they weren't good stuff. The best equipment in the game could actually be distinguished with the naked eye. Especially weapons. Most of the best weapons were covered in a layer of light. Gu Fei's Dark Streamer Sword, Sword Demon's Frostbite's Memory, and Silvermoon's Sword of the King were all like this. Yutian Shinming didn't think that his bow was the best because it didn't have such a layer of light. Since we're so familiar with each other, just tell me what you're doing. Gu Fei squatted in front of her. I'm really just selling stuff. Shi Xiaotian said as she pulled down the veil covering her face. You need to cover your face to sell stuff? Gu Fei asked. Because I'm low-key. Shi Xiaotian said. Really? Gu Fei felt that there must be a reason. He got up and looked around to see if there were any aggressive pursuers. Perhaps this girl was using him as a scapegoat again. In the end, he didn't find anything. The surroundings were peaceful. At this moment, a person dashed in front of the stall and handed something to Shi Xiaotian. Sister Xiaotian, how much does this cost? Shi Xiaotian glanced at it. About 12 gold coins. It'll be very popular if it's sold for 10 gold coins. What if you want to trick Little White? The person smirked. Little White won't be fooled by this. Little White will think that it's useless trash, Shi Xiaotian said. The person sighed and left. A group of swindlers? Gu Fei asked Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian rolled her eyes. Just as she was about to speak, another person came over. Help me see how much this thing costs. Shi Xiaotian glanced at it and shook her head. Your level is too high. I can't use appraisal on you. The person was about to hand the thing to Shi Xiaotian, but Gu Fei quickly stopped him. What are you doing? The person obviously regarded Gu Fei as a robber and hurriedly put the thing back into her pocket. You're giving it to anybody. Be careful that you don't get it back, Gu Fei said meaningfully. The person was dumbfounded. Are you kidding me? As she spoke, she took out the thing again and handed it to Shi Xiaotian warily while guarding against Gu Fei. Gu Fei also put his hand into his pocket, ready to draw it out at any time. Shi Xiaotian accepted the thing and looked at it. 20 gold coins should be enough, he said casually and handed it back. Thank you. The person took it and glanced at Gu Fei. You're crazy. The person mumbled and walked away. Gu Fei was naturally depressed and squatted next to Shi Xiaotian again. What's wrong? You don't like something that's worth 20 gold coins? Smart. Shi Xiaotian said, it seems that you're quite talented. Gu Fei rolled her eyes. However, Shi Xiaotian's hand had already touched Gu Fei's body. What are you doing? Gu Fei was shocked. Did this swindler not only want money but also sex? Your robe is not bad. Shi Xiaotian rubbed Gu Fei's robe with 2 fingers and said, the current equipment definitely doesn't have this quality. Where did you get it? Really? How much do you think it should be? Gu Fei said. I can't see its attributes. Shi Xiaotian continued to look at it and said, take it off and let me see. She waited for a long time and didn't get a response. Her gaze left the robe and looked at Gu Fei's face. He was looking at her with a cold smile. Shi Xiaotian suddenly understood and immediately laughed coldly. I don't think you dare. Such crude provocation is useless against me. Gu Fei said. I'm not lying to you. I've never seen clothes made of this material. It's definitely top quality. Let me see. Shi Xiaotian said. See what? You can't take it out after seeing it. Gu Fei didn't trust Shi Xiaotian at all. If you don't believe me then forget it. Shi Xiaotian turned his head. Wait, how much is this thing worth? Gu Fei pulled out the Dark Knight lightsaber from his pocket. He did this on purpose. Weapons were always the most valuable of all equipment. Not to mention, the Dark Knight lightsaber's grade was even higher than the Moonlight Spirit robe. Gu Fei felt that it was quite interesting that a scammer could see it but not eat it. The dark glow of the Dark Knight lightsaber was enough to explain the situation. Many of the surrounding players' gazes were attracted by it. In the trade street, there had never been such a top-quality item. This street was simply a place for commoner players to purchase and trade for the items they needed. Currently, in the trading market, only warriors with money, studios, and families had the ability to buy exquisite equipment. Moreover, there was basically no market for such equipment. If there really was a top-quality equipment, they wouldn't have to worry about selling it in the auction house or the exchange house. There was no need to bring it to the commoner's trade street. When Gu Fei pulled out the sword, many people's eyes lit up. They all looked at Gu Fei with different gazes. However, no one could understand Gu Fei's true intentions. Most of them thought that they had encountered a super noob that only appeared once in 100 years. They thought that the top-quality equipment was ordinary and wanted to sell it here. This opportunity could not be missed. Many people had already abandoned the items they were buying and were starting to move over. A few pairs noticed each other's intentions and began to glare angrily at each other. There were quite a few people with these thoughts. The crowd quickly gathered around Shi Xiaotian's little stall. Some of the more experienced players saw this and cursed, "Not good." Tricking the noobs out of their top-quality equipment was a great skill. The first thing they had to do was not show their eagerness. The noobs were just noobs that didn't understand the game well. They weren't idiots. If they didn't show it, it would be very easy for the other side to realize the value of the item in their hands. At this moment, no one had the time to show off. However, with the crowd gathering like wolves and tigers, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, no matter who went up to casually talk to the noobs about the item in their hands, they would easily realize that the item in their hands wasn't ordinary. However, there was nothing they could do. After all, everyone wanted to get the top-quality equipment in the noob's hands. It was obviously impossible to get the others to move aside and go up to chat. At this moment, it was a competition of who could brace themselves and make the first move. As soon as this thought appeared, a few people jumped out of the crowd and rushed towards Gu Fei. The others didn't want to be outdone. After a short while, Gu Fei and Shi Xiaotian, who were still squatting in place, felt the light in front of them dim. They turned their heads and saw that the two of them were surrounded. Gu Fei was the number 1 PK player in the parallel world. Shi Xiaotian was a professional swindler whose hobby was deception. Obviously, the two of them were hated to the bone by some people. Now that they were surrounded, even though they were quick-witted, they couldn't see through the minds of so many people. Their hearts skipped a beat, thinking that they were being targeted by their enemies. Gu Fei clenched the sword in his hand, and Shi Xiaotian clenched Gu Fei's robe. The encirclement was too narrow. It wouldn't be easy to break out. Gu Fei complained inwardly. Also, his spell was too slow. Before the heavenly fire will came down, it would have been torn apart by so many people. I was too careless. Gu Fei regretted it. He was so focused on seducing Shi Xiaotian with the exquisite item that he didn't notice the signs around him. I'll act according to the situation. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. While Gu Fei was thinking, the enemies were already moving. One of them smiled kindly and extended his hand. Brother, how much are you going to sell this sword for? Gu Fei and Shi Xiaotian were startled, but immediately reacted and let out a sigh of relief. Gu Fei only knew that the other side didn't have any ill intentions, but Shi Xiaotian understood the situation of the commoners' trading street and instantly understood what these people were thinking. She knew that the other side had come with ill intentions. This sword isn't for sale. Gu Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Brother, I'll pay a high price. One of them said. Oh. How much? Gu Fei was curious and asked. The man pondered for a moment, then as if he had made up his mind, he gritted his teeth and said, I'll pay 20 gold coins. Gu Fei was startled. Even if he didn't understand the market, he still knew that the Night Streak sword wasn't only worth 20 gold coins. 20 gold coins might be a huge sum for normal players, but it wasn't the case for experts. The most expensive wine in the tavern could be bought for 20 gold coins. Many of the surrounding people looked at this, 20 gold coins, with disdain. With so many people surrounding him, the other side would know that the item in his hand wouldn't only be worth 20 gold coins. However, everyone noticed that Gu Fei was frozen in place, as if he was hesitating. Their hearts trembled. Could this be the noob of noobs that only appeared once in 100 years? Not only did he know nothing about the game, but he was also naturally dumb. The crowd was boiling. 20 gold coins, aren't you being too greedy? Brother, I'll pay 21 gold coins. 21 gold coins. Just one more. Stingy, I'll pay 23. 25. 30. Look at you guys, 50 gold coins. Someone patted his chest. 50 gold coins was already a huge sum on the commoner's trading street. Most of the players were about to flee when they heard this number. However, seeing that the superb equipment was in the hands of a noob with naturally dumb attributes, the players had a thought in their minds. They wouldn't lose out even if they used cash to trade for this item. They could definitely sell it for a high price if they changed hands. With that thought in mind, nobody cared about how many gold coins they had in their wallets, and they only cared about bidding. 50, 55, 60, 80, 100, in the blink of an eye, the bid had reached 500 gold coins. Currently, superb equipment in the parallel world could be traded for more than 1,000 gold coins. If they could really buy it for 500 gold coins, it would definitely be a profitable deal. However, at this level of bidding, the bidder already had another thought in his mind. The sword in Gu Fei's hand had a layer of halo, which was a sign of superb equipment. However, nobody had actually seen the attributes of the sword. There were many appraisal experts around, but none of them could appraise the attributes of the longsword in Gu Fei's hand. How could a noob with naturally dumb attributes improve appraisal to such a high level? Or perhaps, a noob with naturally dumb attributes had a higher level than everyone present? Could it be that he was level 31? Everyone suddenly felt that this natural daze in front of them was not that simple. Although he had a dazed expression on his face when everyone was calling out the price. There was a sudden pause in the bidding. Everyone stopped talking at the same time. They realized that things were not as they had expected. They all wanted to see the other party's reaction when the bidding stopped. 500 gold coins. Brother, this price is already the limit. I don't think anyone is willing to pay a higher price, right? Someone said, looking around and winking. Everyone knew what he was thinking, so they cooperated and didn't speak, waiting for Gu Fei's reaction. Before Gu Fei could speak, Shi Xiaotian suddenly blinked. You see, there are actually a lot of liars in this world. Shi Xiaotian said. Chapter 101. Even though Gu Fei didn't understand the state of the game very well, in this type of situation where people were calling out bids one after another, the only person who wouldn't understand what these people were thinking was probably Little Rain. These people just wanted to take advantage of Gu Fei's ignorance and take advantage of him. Honestly speaking, it wasn't wrong to say that they were tricking him. Shi Xiaotian's words exposed the truth. Everyone's faces naturally didn't look good. They immediately realized that Gu Fei sitting there without saying a word wasn't because he was ignorant. Maybe he was just pretending to be stupid. After being laughed at for so long, everyone didn't feel good in their hearts. Some people had already left in embarrassment, but there was still a portion that stared angrily at Gu Fei. In this type of simulated environment, many people's EQ plummeted. After all, in this world, the feeling of embarrassment and humiliation was just as strong as in reality, but it wasn't restricted by the many objective factors that existed in reality. If I don't like you, I can hit you. If I don't like you, I can beat you up. Sometimes, the online game was an unreasonable world. Through simulated technology, this unreasonable world became lively. However, the rules of this world didn't change at all. Battle was the most important thing. This was the main theme of the game. The concept of strength was very broad. It could be an individual's strength, a guild's strength, or it could be a certain power that appeared at a certain time, at a certain place. November 21, 13:45 p.m. Cloud City's Cloud Pattern Street, the trading street that players talked about, had such a powerful group appear. Or rather, it was a group that thought they had strength. Because strength was measured in relative terms. The group of people in front of them clearly thought that with their numbers, they were a powerful group against the opponent they were about to face. Their opponent, the squatting Gu Fei, had already stood up. Most of the people realized that they couldn't achieve their goal of scamming the noobs and left in embarrassment. But there was a small portion of people who didn't achieve their goal and felt like they had been tricked. They wanted to stay and argue with Gu Fei. Gu Fei was helpless. Like the main character, he righteously said, "What do you want?" Angry stare. No one spoke. It was only because they coincidentally formed a group that they coincidentally had the same mentality. At this time, they only had a little eye contact, and they had not yet elected their spokesperson. "If there's nothing else, I'm leaving," Gu Fei said. "Wait." Someone finally spoke. The crowd spread out in all directions, blocking all possible exits for Gu Fei. With the same mentality and the same intentions, they could instantly build tacit cooperation. Gu Fei looked at these people calmly. It seemed like they wanted to fight. Unfortunately, using violence to curb violence was Gu Fei's hobby. Ever since he was young, his father had taken advantage of the fact that they were a martial arts family and liked to teach him a lesson. However, he also forbade him from casually fighting with others outside. Gu Fei had always thought that he wouldn't get this opportunity before he raised his son. Thank you online games, thank you parallel worlds, thank you to the great author, Butterfly Blue, for making Gu Fei's dreams a reality. The two faced each other. Gu Fei crooked his finger at Shi Xiaotian. "What's the matter?" Shi Xiaotian asked. "What are the PK rules?" "Explain them to me," Gu Fei said. The crowd was in an uproar. Too naive, too arrogant. Everyone thought. Shi Xiaotian was also startled, not knowing where to start. After a while, she slowly said, "Kill a person, PK points increase by 1. "Nonsense." Gu Fei rolled his eyes at her. "How would I not know that? I mean, how can it not increase PK points?" From what Hongchen Yixiao said that day, it was obvious that killing people would not increase PK points. Gu Fei remembered to check it out at the time, but forgot about it afterwards and did not check the website. Counterattacking after being attacked doesn't increase PK points. Killing people with PK points doesn't increase PK points. Shi Xiaotian said. Killing people with PK points doesn't increase PK points. Gu Fei was at a loss. He did not believe that one of the two people he killed with Heavenly Flame Wheel in Moonlit Night City did not have PK points. That's for someone without PK points. Those with PK points are exceptions. Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei was relieved. He gripped the sword in his hand and turned to look at the people surrounding him. "Come." Everyone was startled. No one made a move. "You want to kill us, but you don't want to increase your PK points. How can it be so easy? I can't make the first move," the crowd thought. In that instant, the crowd got the relationship between the two sides wrong, thinking that Gu Fei was surrounding them and was ready to take it out on them. After waiting for a long time, the other side did not respond. Gu Fei was quite disappointed. To be honest, he loved fighting and PK, but he could not be an unreasonable person, so he could only hope that someone didn't like him. Thinking of this, Gu Fei couldn't help but miss the PK atmosphere in Moonlit Night City. He missed the Black Hand mercenary group that still wanted to rob him for some reason. How were they doing now? Gu Fei was melancholy. He started to feel melancholy just 3 hours after he left Moonlit Night City. "If you don't want to fight, then let's disperse." Gu Fei sighed honestly. This regret and calmness undoubtedly increased the other side's suspicions. Of course, a temporary small group had its shortcomings. The most obvious was the lack of trust and understanding between each other. Gu Fei was a guy with an exquisite weapon. He had no confidence in fighting one-on-one and needed to rely on the strength of others. At this time, they would inevitably think, "I'm fine, but I wonder how strong the others are." Everyone looked around hesitantly, looking at each other and thinking, this idiot probably can't do it. Looking at his eyes, he wants to rely on others. In this way, everyone felt that they had the ability, but the others couldn't. The conclusion they could only come to was to give up. At the same time, they rejoiced that they hadn't been impulsive. Unknowingly, the people surrounding Gu Fei became fewer and fewer. They came arrogantly and left quietly. Not long after, they left Gu Fei alone. How depressing, Gu Fei said gloomily. A few hoots and a sigh had scared the enemy away. Could it be that he had acted too actively and was too conspicuous? Don't worry, Shi Xiaotian said, if you want to fight, there will be a chance. You mean those guys over there? Gu Fei swept his eyes over a corner of the trading street. You noticed them? Shi Xiaotian was surprised. I noticed them a long time ago, Gu Fei said. Then what are you worried about? Shi Xiaotian said. Those guys can only be considered as appointments. They could have fought 2 rounds, but now they're missing one. How regretful, Gu Fei said unwillingly. Violent flight. Shi Xiaotian sighed in admiration. Gu Fei squatted down again and continued to speak with anticipation. Why aren't they coming over yet? They won't come over so easily, Shi Xiaotian said. Oh. You seem to know them, Gu Fei said. There's a group of people in Cloud City that once they've set their eyes on someone's equipment, they'll look for a chance to kill you and drop your equipment. I think they've set their eyes on you, Shi Xiaotian said. Is that so? Gu Fei glanced in that direction again. The people that had been gathered together had already dispersed. Only one person remained, nonchalantly setting up a stall. The other guys had already disappeared. They won't easily make a move and won't give up easily. They won't stop until you drop the sword in your hand, Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei knew the importance of not showing off his wealth and keeping a low profile. But at the same time, he also discovered the benefits of having an exquisite equipment. It could tempt people with evil thoughts to come over and provoke him. He would take the opportunity to punish evil and uphold good, maintaining world peace. In short, there would be a fight to fight. Right now they've dispersed. They left one person behind, probably to keep an eye on you. He'll find a quiet night when you're alone to make a move on you. Shi Xiaotian said, I'll kill you today, kill you tomorrow, kill you the day after. In short, I'll remember you and kill you until I get the sword in your hand. Gu Fei nodded and then asked, You're with them? Fuck you. Shi Xiaotian was anxious. Gu Fei was dumbfounded. Don't go on and on. I'm not as bad as you think I am, Shi Xiaotian said angrily. Gu Fei's expression was a bit unnatural. After a while, he said, Then what are you doing here with your face covered? Selling things. Shi Xiaotian pounded the ground. Do I have to cover my face to sell things? Gu Fei asked. Do you want to know why you're covering your face? Shi Xiaotian said and immediately tore off the veil on his face. He shouted, I'm selling equipment, it's cheap. Anyone who wants it, come take a look. The crisp female voice drew everyone's attention, and several people's eyes immediately lit up. One of them had already flown over and bent down to pick up the junk on Shi Xiaotian's stall. She then said, Not bad, I'll take all of it. Name your price, beautiful, 10 gold coins. Shi Xiaotian said expressionlessly. No problem. The person directly wrapped up the cloth on the ground and took all of Shi Xiaotian's items. He then counted out the gold coins and generously handed them over. The surrounding players' eyes shone with envy. Beauty, I've bought everything. You don't have anything to do anymore. Let's go for a drink or two. The person who bought the items didn't leave and continued to dawdle. Fuck off. Shi Xiaotian almost spat his saliva on the person's face. The crowd was in an uproar. The junk on Shi Xiaotian's stall was just some ordinary goods. Added together, it was only worth 10 gold coins. However, these items covered quite a few professions. In theory, no one would buy them all at the same time. Now that this had happened, it was clear that the drunkard had ulterior motives. 10 gold coins wasn't a small amount of money for a normal player. To spend so much money just to strike up a conversation with someone, it could be seen that this person was also a normal player with tens of thousands of dollars. Everyone was envious of his luck with women. They didn't want to put on a good show, but this girl in front of them was extremely unrestrained. It was fine if she didn't want to go on a date after selling her stuff, but she actually cursed at him. Only Gu Fei sighed inwardly. Shi Xiaotian was clearly venting his anger on this person. Could it be that he had wronged her this time? So, she was just going to set up a stall here and sell some trash. Gu Fei was at a loss. But no matter what, the anger of the buyer in front of him continued to rise. It was obvious that no matter how alluring the girl was, no one would be able to tolerate her acting like this for no reason. Fuck. The big brother in front of him spent 10 gold coins for nothing. He was almost spat on, and was even laughed at by a group of people. Of course he wouldn't be able to control himself. Shi Xiaotian tossed a bag of equipment that he had just bought to Shi Xiaotian. Then, he reached into his pocket and took out an axe that was even larger than Xiao Yu's. He straightened his back and gathered his jinqi in his dantian. Then, he bent his legs slightly and held the axe in his right hand so that it was at a 45-degree angle to the ground. Gu Fei, who was extremely experienced in combat, immediately knew what Shi Xiaotian was up to. He hurriedly raised his sword to block the attack while grabbing Shi Xiaotian with his other hand. Whirlwind slash came as expected. From this, it could be seen that this warrior's combat experience wasn't low. An experienced warrior would always ensure that they had a certain amount of anger stored on them to activate their skills. Whirlwind slash wasn't only the warrior's highest attack skill, it was also their ultimate life-saving skill. It was much more useful than the warrior's defensive skill, entrench. Blocking whirlwind slash was already a skill that Gu Fei was extremely familiar with. Even when he was sent flying, he could still maintain his elegant posture. But this time, something unexpected happened. Whirlwind slash was blocked, and he was sent flying, but it was a muddy flight. The reason for that was because even though Gu Fei was grabbing onto Shi Xiaotian with all his might, his strength was simply too low. There was no way for him to drag Shi Xiaotian into the air. Instead, he was dragged down by Shi Xiaotian. In the end, he managed to borrow strength and was sent flying, but he didn't fly. The two were like groundhogs, sliding on the ground, causing dust to fly everywhere. Gu Fei was still fine. At the very least, he was standing. Although the momentum was fast, Gu Fei's agility wasn't low, so he was able to switch his feet. Shi Xiaotian, on the other hand, was in a miserable state. Caught off guard, he was dragged to the ground the moment he flew out. He was basically gliding along the way. What was even more pitiful was that the equipment that the warrior had dropped on her was still there. At this moment, it was hanging on her thief's cloak, jingling as she flew. Because he was dragging a person, it affected Gu Fei's performance. He didn't control the direction of his strength well, and was sent flying, immediately crashing into a wall. Gu Fei's back hurt, and he felt as if his bones were falling apart. Looking down, he saw Shi Xiaotian flying towards him like a missile. In the blink of an eye, he was about to hit the wall. Gu Fei hurriedly stretched out his foot and stepped on it, changing the direction of his strength. Shi Xiaotian rolled and came to a stop. Sorry. Gu Fei said. Big bro, hurry up and get down. Someone suddenly replied. Gu Fei looked down and hurriedly dodged to the side. There was still a person under his feet. Thinking about the two sides of the street were filled with players setting up stalls, Gu Fei rushed over. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, the person wanted to dodge, but after sitting cross-legged for a day, his legs and feet were numb. He rolled and crawled on the ground, lowering his body. In the end, he was stepped on by Gu Fei. I'm sorry. Gu Fei quickly apologized again. The person rolled on the ground, facing the sky, and let out a breath. It's fine. Looking at Shi Xiaotian, he crawled up from the ground, and after a while said, I'd rather be chopped to death. Everyone was in an uproar again. Because no one thought that these two guys were actually still alive. They could see Gu Fei raise his sword to block, but no one could see the timing of the slash. In their eyes, these two were sent flying by whirlwind slash. Even if they weren't dead, they shouldn't be far from death. Although they looked a bit haggard, their lives were obviously not in danger. The warrior had already put away his whirlwind slash, but he had no intention of giving up. He strode towards Shi Xiaotian. Gu Fei looked at her and asked, if I cut him now, it won't add PK points, right? Shi Xiaotian was stunned for a moment before nodding his head. She also didn't know what happened during the whirlwind slash. Looking at her health, she knew that Gu Fei had grabbed her and dodged it. Others couldn't identify Gu Fei's class, but she knew that Gu Fei was a mage. Currently, mages were a class that countered warriors, so it shouldn't be too difficult to deal with a warrior one-on-one. But no matter what, mages shouldn't use the word cut, which puzzled Shi Xiaotian. Gu Fei was about to step forward when suddenly 3 people rushed out and stood between Shi Xiaotian and the warrior. Gu Fei glanced and saw that one of the people who had asked Shi Xiaotian about the price was among them. Friend, this might be a misunderstanding. Don't be in such a hurry to attack. One of them said. Go to hell, get lost. The warrior said the words that Shi Xiaotian had just said. He raised his battle axe and activated charge. The person who spoke was immediately knocked back several steps, and after stabilizing, he was still dizzy and unable to move. The people on the left and right saw that it didn't make sense, so they hurriedly attacked. The warrior on the left wielded a one-handed sword and also activated charge. The thief on the right swung his dagger, attempting to go behind the warrior and use backstab. The charge hit the warrior. However, the stun effect of charge didn't have a 100% chance of success. This was related to the proficiency of the skill, the opponent's level, and equipment. Although this charge hit, it didn't cause a stun. The big axe warrior was also abnormally brave. He ignored the warrior who had just used charge and turned his head to chop at the thief who was attempting to go behind him. At the same time, he moved his feet to guard against the thief's movement. Just like that, the two sides clashed, and the two were obviously not strong enough. In the blink of an eye, the big axe warrior had control of the situation, and the two were forced to retreat. The weapons of both sides clashed and tangled, causing Gu Fei to shake his head. How was this a battle? This was simply a fight between children. He broke a branch or a bamboo pole and treated it like a divine weapon. He waved the pole around and bumped it, but he didn't hit the other party. In the end, the one whose pole broke first would be the loser. Gu Fei remembered that after watching the TV series, The Return of the Condor Heroes, the children in his neighbor's house practiced Juanjin swordsmanship and fairy swordsmanship in this way. It was so similar to the scene in front of him. Gu Fei was anxious, and the two who were defeated were even more anxious. They turned back and shouted at Shi Xiaotian, Sister Tian, hurry up and leave. Shi Xiaotian shouted, I'm coming. She put her hand in her pocket and wanted to use a weapon to help. Gu Fei had already stepped forward and held her down. Let me do it. Shi Xiaotian looked at him, and Gu Fei smiled at her. You're quite popular, Gu Fei said, then turned to the two guys and shouted, you two, get out of the way, I'll fight him one-on-one. The two had probably been waiting for this moment for a long time. Regardless of who was shouting at them, they quickly found a chance to retreat to the side. Gu Fei coughed, took a few steps forward, and stood in front of the warrior. The warrior also steadied himself. At this time, he was in a murderous mood, beating the three of them to a pulp, and this was the time when his confidence was inflated. But when he saw the dark halo of the night streamer in Gu Fei's hand, his heart could not help but skip a beat. The three just now were obviously far inferior to him in terms of level and equipment, which was why they were easily bullied by him. But now, This guy actually had an exquisite weapon in his hand, which he really did not notice earlier. The warrior calmed himself down and quickly cast an identification spell on Gu Fei. However, he could not find anything. He used his eyes to judge, but fell into a state of confusion again. He had never seen a black robe before, and it seemed to be a mage's robe. But the weapon in his hand was a sword. Those who would choose a sword as a weapon were mostly warriors, followed by knights. Weapons were obviously the most representative of the difference in professions. The warrior had already determined that Gu Fei was of the same race, and was about to take the next step when he suddenly saw Gu Fei put the sword back into his pocket, and then pulled it out with his bare hands. Bare hands? Grandmaster of combat? The warrior was confused again. Even a grandmaster of combat would have gloves to increase their attack power, but Gu Fei obviously did not even wear one. Let's try one move first. The warrior thought, and suddenly went forward, smashing down with a fierce blow. Gu Fei dodged slightly and floated to the warrior's side, waving his right hand, dual flame flash, flash. A flame rose, and the warrior instantly turned bright red. He was shocked. Fuck, so he really is a mage. Mages were the bane of warriors, this was a fact that was known by everyone. This warrior had actually identified that the 3 people who blocked his way earlier did not have any mages, and that their levels were very low, which was why he had the guts to fight 1 against 3. Now that he had encountered a profession that he could not identify, and that also countered him, his arrogance was immediately reduced by half. Gu Fei was actually thinking for the warrior's sake by not using a weapon at this time. Just now, this person had fought 1 against 3, and with their rough fighting style, he must have lost a lot of HP. Gu Fei was afraid that if he went down with this weapon, whether it was the night streamer or the fire baptism, this guy would be finished in an instant. There was a reason for this. Gu Fei actually did not want to PK this warrior in front of him. He believed that with his bare hands, this little bit of magic damage should not have much power. The warrior who was hit by the dual flame flash continued to lose HP, but after realizing that the damage was not high, he became spirited, and the giant axe in his hand swung like a windmill. But it was said that mages countered warriors because mages had an advantage in speed over warriors, and could increase the distance between them. At the same time, magic attacks could ignore the high physical defense of warriors, and thus gain the upper hand. Normal mages were like this, not to mention Gu Fei, who was full of agility. Easily pulling away from the opponent, Gu Fei threw small fireballs like a hidden weapon. Although the damage was not high, it was still reducing the warrior's HP bit by bit. If this continued, no matter how long it took, the warrior would not have any chance of winning. Gu Fei saw the despair in the opponent's eyes, and immediately retreated a few steps and said, "Brother, there was actually a bit of a misunderstanding just now." This time, the warrior did not hurriedly curse, and very calmly stood and listened to Gu Fei speak. Those who had strength had the right to speak, this saying was definitely true in the game. Shi Xiaotian also walked up at this time. "Yeah, it was my fault. I've been in a bad mood these past few days, and can't control my anger, so I randomly curse people. Sorry for the offense. These things are still yours, and the money will be refunded to you. Consider it my apology." Shi Xiaotian tidied up the equipment hanging on his body, and packed a new bag. He took out another 10 gold and handed it over to the warrior. The warrior was stunned, and reached out his hand to take the money. "Give me back the money, I don't want the things." Take it, take it." Shi Xiaotian begged, wanting to shove it into the other's hand. The warrior did not know what to do. Just now, he was saying, "Fuck off," and now he was forcefully grabbing his hand. The change was too big. "Forget it. Who wants your junk?" Gu Fei said from behind. "Fuck you, it's all because of you." Shi Xiaotian turned around and threw the bag of equipment at Gu Fei. Gu Fei was embarrassed, and he spread his hands at the warrior, saying helplessly, "You see, women, there are always a few days every month." Everyone came to a realization, and looked at Shi Xiaotian together. On the side, Gu Fei had a naturally dazed expression. In the distance, someone in the corner was quietly sending a message. That person is a mage. Chapter 102. The axe-wielding warrior took his 10 gold coins and left. The players who had nothing to see naturally dispersed. The 3 young heroes who wanted to play the hero and save the damsel in distress accepted Shi Xiaotian's consolation. Gu Fei wanted to sneak away, but Shi Xiaotian saw through him and shouted, "Stop! If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. You guys talk." Gu Fei quickly said, "There's something else." Shi Xiaotian said, "Is there anything else?" Gu Fei smiled. Shi Xiaotian looked at him and didn't say anything. Gu Fei sighed, "Fine. I was wrong today. I'm sorry." Deep down, Gu Fei was unwilling to apologize because he still felt that Shi Xiaotian was squatting on the trading street selling junk was a fact that he couldn't accept. Unfortunately, he didn't have any clear evidence. Gu Fei felt this way because his intuition told him that Shi Xiaotian's dedication to deception was no less than his passion for kung fu. Hearing Gu Fei's apology, Shi Xiaotian smiled, "You're right. I did have an ulterior motive. Damn it. I knew it." Gu Fei shouted in his heart, but his face didn't change. "What do you want to do?" Shi Xiaotian glanced to the side. Gu Fei followed her gaze and saw that it was the guy squatting in the corner, setting up a stall and glancing over from time to time. "What's wrong?" Gu Fei was puzzled. Shi Xiaotian turned around and persuaded the 3 heroes to leave. Then she pulled Gu Fei back to the wall. "These people have a lot of good stuff. You've been paying attention to them for a long time?" Gu Fei asked. "For a while." Shi Xiaotian said, "I noticed them at the auction house and the trading street. Usually, they would look for players who had just bought exquisite equipment and then make a move on them. I've seen them surround and attack players with exquisite equipment 3 times. This is too much." Gu Fei said. Shi Xiaotian nodded. "I have a feeling that this group of people is not a random group. They should be from the same studio, or a family guild." Seeing the confusion on Gu Fei's face, Shi Xiaotian explained further, "When players enter the parallel world, they are randomly assigned to the main city, and the teleportation between the world map and the main city has not been opened yet. When these gaming studios and clan guilds enter the game, they naturally can't gather in one place, so there will be some of their forces in each main city. For now, they can only go their own way, and for the time being, they won't use the banners of their gaming studios or clan guilds." Studio? A clan guild? In fact, this was where Gu Fei was at a loss. "Don't tell me you don't know what this is," Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei smiled awkwardly. "I've heard a little about it, but I don't know much about it." "Then I'll put it simply. Gaming studios exist for profit. If they drop players' equipment, they will sell it as soon as possible. If it's a clan guild, I'm afraid it's to strengthen their own strength, and they will use the exquisite equipment themselves," Shi Xiaotian said. "Then what kind of people are these people?" Gu Fei asked. "I think it should be a clan guild. Gaming studios aim to make money, and they care more about the game's environment and order than any other player. A big gaming studio with strict discipline would never do this kind of thing. Only some short-sighted small gaming studios would kill the goose that lays the golden eggs, but these small gaming studios are limited in size, and in the situation where the game randomly enters the main city, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to make a name for themselves in any of the main cities," Shi Xiaotian said. "That's right." Gu Fei nodded. "I've already asked for information from the players who had their equipment dropped, hoping to identify these guys through their equipment. However, the equipment that was dropped seemed to have evaporated. It didn't appear in the auction house, the trading house, or in the hands of the players in the leveling area," Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei suddenly understood. "So you ran to the trading street to see if they would appear here?" Shi Xiaotian nodded. "The probability of them appearing here is really not high. But other than this, I can't think of any other clues." Gu Fei smiled. You forgot something. What? Shi Xiaotian asked. Mailbox. Gu Fei said. Oh. Shi Xiaotian suddenly realized and hit his head. Since this group of people is a large organization like you're talking about, then of course they have their own forces in every main city. Their method of strengthening themselves is probably also used in every main city. But this group of people is also very cautious. The equipment that they dropped actually didn't use in their main city, they must have used the mailbox to exchange. That's why you definitely won't be able to see the dropped equipment in Cloud City, Gu Fei analyzed. Yes. That must be it. Shi Xiaotian patted Gu Fei. Not bad. Gu Fei smiled. In reality, he didn't have such a deep understanding of the details of the game. It was just that when he was in Moonlit Night City, he had just written a letter and heard that Non-Smiler had sent the Wind Whisper to Cloud Morning. These were all things that had happened in the past 2 days, so it was easy for it to become the key to enlightening Gu Fei. If that's the case, then it'll be really hard to find these people. Shi Xiaotian sighed. It was too easy to hide one's identity in the parallel world. If you didn't say your name, no one would know. You could cover your appearance with a piece of cloth. You could also prepare a few sets of equipment to change back and forth. This was what Gu Fei had always done. So, we need someone with exquisite equipment as bait. That way, we can lure these people out. Gu Fei said, what a coincidence. I've already been targeted by them. I never thought of it that way. Shi Xiaotian was stunned. Even if we lure them out, it'll be useless. They killed you and dropped your equipment, but you still don't know who they are. As long as they don't die so easily. Gu Fei smiled. Shi Xiaotian rolled his eyes. Did I not explain it clearly enough? This is a group of players who drop exquisite equipment every day. They don't need to prove their strength, do they? Besides, they should have some exquisite equipment now. Then why did you stop me? Gu Fei was stunned. Shi Xiaotian was also stunned. I just wanted to tell you the real reason why I'm here. That's simple. Gu Fei asked. That's simple. Shi Xiaotian nodded. Gu Fei was just about to say something when a system notification popped up. It was from Han Family Young Master. He opened it and saw, Sword Demon was killed. Gu Fei was shocked and immediately asked, where? I was leveling up in the leveling area. I just received the message. Han Family Young Master said, Little Ray's Bar. I'm waiting for you. Gu Fei ignored Han Family Young Master and immediately sent a message to Sword Demon. You're in the revival area. Don't go out yet. What's wrong? Sword Demon asked. Don't go out while you're in the revival area. Gu Fei said. Sword Demon only replied with one word. Okay. Gu Fei looked at Shi Xiaotian. My friend seems to have been targeted by these guys. What's wrong? He was just killed in the leveling area. Oh right, you know him. Frostbite's memories. Do you remember him? Gu Fei said. Of course. Shi Xiaotian said calmly. That's him. I'm going over now. Gu Fei stood up. Wait. Don't forget that you're being targeted too. Shi Xiaotian said. That's right. Gu Fei said as he walked straight towards the guy who was stalking him. Hey! Gu Fei shouted as he arrived in front of the guy. The guy raised his head and was surprised to see Gu Fei. But he quickly regained his composure and said with a smile, What do you want? Gu Fei smiled. Robbery. What? The guy was startled. Gu Fei had already taken his hand out of his pocket. With the Dark Knight Stream sword in hand, he stabbed forward. The guy reacted quickly and dodged to the side. But Gu Fei was even faster. He bent down and chased after the guy. Dual flame flash, flash. He shouted. The dark night stream sword slashed out a fire dragon, sweeping past the guy's body and disappearing along with the guy's disbelieving gaze. Gu Fei didn't have the mood to deal with him and directly used a spell to kill him. Gu Fei crouched down and carefully packed up the guy's stall. He shook it and picked it up. When he got up, the surroundings were silent. All of the players looked at Gu Fei in fear. Many of them had already hurriedly packed up their stalls. Even more people had already pulled out their weapons. They looked at each other and prepared to face a common enemy. Gu Fei smiled. It's a personal grudge. Don't worry about me. Continue with what you're doing. He turned and walked out under everyone's gazes. When he passed by Shi Xiaotian's stall, he flicked his finger. This thing looks pretty good. I'll give it to you. Shi Xiaotian took it. It was a crystal emblem. Its stats were trash, but it did have a beautiful design. Shi Xiaotian curled his lips. I hate you robbers the most. There's no technique involved at all. Gu Fei laughed and quickly left the trading street. The street was just as quiet as before. When Gu Fei disappeared, everyone's gaze fell on Shi Xiaotian. Chapter 103. After leaving the trading street, Gu Fei went straight to Little Ray's bar. This kind of emergency gathering was the best demonstration of everyone's speed. When Gu Fei arrived at the tavern, he saw that the Han family young master and Yutian Shenming had already arrived. One of them was drinking here, and the other was writing a wizard's secret book in another tavern not far away. So, after waiting for a while, Brother Yu arrived, and after waiting for a long time, unscathed in battle finally ran in. Why isn't Sword Demon here yet? The Han family young master looked at the time and frowned. Oh. I told him not to leave the resurrection point, Gu Fei said. Why? Everyone looked at Gu Fei. This is a premeditated group. Gu Fei said, they're targeting guys with excellent equipment, and then find an opportunity to kill them until the equipment drops. Sword Demon must have been targeted by them. Brother Yu was stunned. After a while, he said gloomily, Qianli, don't be like this. You're stealing my rice bowl. If you reveal the information, do I still have any value in this group? Gu Fei hurriedly stepped back. Go on, go on. Brother Yu nodded, cleared his throat, and looked around at everyone. The basic situation is like what Qianli said. Everyone, see what else you want to add. Everyone rolled their eyes. Brother Yu was also embarrassed. If it was so easy to find out about these people, they would have been hunted down long ago. They've succeeded many times. The guys who were killed don't know their identities. Brother Yu nodded. They mainly ambushed mages, archers, and thieves. The victims died before they could find them. Everyone was deep in thought. The Han family young master said to Gu Fei, so you suspect that they've already set up outside the resurrection point and will continue to ambush Sword Demon? Of course, Gu Fei said confidently. Han family young master patted him on the shoulder. Rogue knows how to lurk, thank you. Gu Fei was so ashamed that he could not show his face. Han family young master sent another message to Sword Demon. After waiting for a while, the Sword Demon appeared. My condolences. My condolences. Everyone expressed their condolences. Sword Demon didn't seem too sad. It's just dropping a level. It's no big deal. No one spoke. In fact, Sword Demon's death wasn't as simple as losing a level. He was almost level 31. This death was technically a loss of a level, but in reality, it could be said to be a loss of 2 levels. It's good that Frostbite hasn't lost his memory, Gu Fei comforted him. I dropped it. Sword Demon said lightly. Everyone was shocked. The drop rate of equipment in the parallel world wasn't this high. Dropping the best weapon on him in one go, Sword Demon could be said to be extremely unlucky. Not good, they'll send Frostbite's memory to other main cities. Then we won't be able to find it anymore. Gu Fei stood up and said. How do you know? The others were stunned. There's no time to talk about it in detail. Go to the mailbox and intercept them. Gu Fei said. They killed me for Frostbite's memory. Sword Demon still hadn't figured out the cause of death. There is indeed such a group of people now. They specifically target players with excellent equipment, and then. Brother, you said. Scum. Sword Demon clenched his teeth. Being killed didn't cause Sword Demon to be overly angry. Even dropping excellent equipment could be restrained. But after knowing the reason for being killed, Sword Demon was really angry. Let's stop talking. Let's move. Gu Fei urged everyone. Sword Demon died in the leveling area and returned in the blink of an eye. However, they had spent a lot of time gathering at Little Ray's bar. If the other party had returned with Frostbite's memories and mailed it, they would have arrived by now. He wasn't even sure if he could make it in time, so he couldn't delay any longer. From the Sword Demon's leveling area, the closest way is through the East Gate. However, in order to avoid the revenge of the victims, it was very likely that they would go through another door. However, we don't have enough manpower. If we split up into 4 gates, we might not be a match for them. He could only take a gamble now. Brother Yu, Yutian, Wushang, go to the East Gate. Sword Demon, Qianli, and I will go to the South Gate. We'll talk about the rest in the guild channel. Han family young master stood up and made arrangements. Wait, I think Qianli can do it alone. Yutian Xinming said. Everyone was startled, but after thinking about it, they agreed. Han family young master nodded. Qianli, you go to the North Gate. Can you and Sword Demon do it alone? Brother Yu was worried. Han family young master didn't have much fighting power as a priest. Sword Demon was strong enough, but the problem was that he had just lost a level. More importantly, Frostbite's memories had also been destroyed, so his strength had dropped greatly. Han family young master didn't care. The 3 of you are the most worrisome. Can you do it without a priest? Damn. Worry about yourself. Sword Demon, if you can't get Frostbite's memories back, it will definitely be his fault. Yutian Xinming was dissatisfied. Sword Demon smiled. Okay. Let's go. The 3 groups left Little Ray's bar and went their separate ways. At this moment, the difference in speed was once again shown. Of the 3, Yutian Xinming had already run a long way. Brother Yuan unscathed in battle were left behind, one in front and one behind. Sword Ghost and the other 2, as well as the Han family's young master, were slowly left behind. However, the South Gate and East Gate were relatively close to Little Ray's bar. When they reached the city gate, the distance wouldn't be too far. At this moment, time was tight, so they couldn't be too careful. Online gaming experts like them had already mastered the skill of chatting while traveling in the parallel world. At this moment, they were communicating in the guild channel. Actually, it might not be the people who dropped the equipment. It might be someone seeking revenge. Let's not talk about the old grudges in the game. In the parallel world, Sword Demon, your identity was the most exposed when you killed unsmilingly. Frostbite's memories is too eye-catching. Han family young master said. I know. Sword Demon said. Also, this time, you were also at the forefront of the command in Moonlit Night City, right? I'm afraid you've met those people from the previous life. Han clan's young master said. The people from the previous world probably won't come to take revenge so quickly. They're still very busy over there. Brother, you interrupted. I know, I'm just saying. Han family young master said. What are those people like? Sword Demon, you still haven't said. Brother, you said. When they attacked, the classes that appeared were mages, thieves, and archers. I was instantly killed and didn't have time to see who it was. However, the moment I died, I used Identify on the thief that ambushed me. He wore the storm cloak, which increased agility by 12 and attack speed by 5%, shadow boots, which increased movement speed by 14%, windproof hat, dual belt, wolf ring, which increased agility and strength by 4, candle emblem, which increased HP by 2%, force ring, which increased strength by 2%, speed necklace, which increased agility by 2%. His weapon is double-edged fang, and has a split effect. Sword Demon reported. In the parallel world, as long as the name was the same, then the basic attack and defense attributes would be completely the same. The difference was in the additional attributes. Identifying the target through the equipment, the additional attributes were also the main basis. After hearing Sword Demon's report, Han family young master concluded, pay attention to teams with mages, thieves, and archers. Pay attention to thieves with the aforementioned equipment. Everyone responded. Gu Fei stopped and said blankly, I don't know identify, what should I do? Due to the time constraint, everyone neglected this problem. Gu Fei was traveling alone. He had no problem with his strength, but he could not identify his opponents because he did not know identify. In order to take on this mission, it was not enough to just know identify, one had to have a high appraisal level. In the game, it was very troublesome to use identify to identify players. Firstly, the player's level could not be lower than the other parties. Then, it would be a competition of identify. There was no 100% success rate or failure rate. It was just like the probability of hitting the target. Moreover, it did not mean that one could look through the target's entire body if the appraisal was successful. Sometimes, one would only see 4 or 5 of the 9 pieces of equipment, and the rest would still be question marks. In any case, since Gu Fei did not even know identify, his trip was in vain. In the elite team, Brother Yu had the highest appraisal level, followed by Sword Demon. The Han family's young master and the other two were thinking that as experts, they couldn't have such a glaring weakness. Hence, they symbolically trained as well. However, putting aside whether they could make it in time to help Gu Fei, Sword Demon and Han family young master could not afford to lose any more people. Yutian Xinming and the other two were in danger too. After all, they did not have a priest to heal them, and it would be difficult for them to fight against such professional teams. Ignore him. Qianli can just pick up a random girl by the roadside and help him appraise. Yutian Xinming added insult to injury. The others treated it as a joke and continued to worry. Unexpectedly, Gu Fei was reminded by that. He immediately replied, okay, I'll find someone to help. Everyone was shocked. Could he really hook up a girl to be his assistant on the street? Of course, that was not Gu Fei's plan. However, Yutian Xinming's mention of a girl reminded Gu Fei that he did not need anyone to help him fight. He only needed to use identify. There might be girls who were reborn as amethyst who could do such a task. Following which, he opened the guild channel. Suddenly, rows of text flew up in the air. Girls loved to gossip, and they gossiped in the guild channel every day, even more diligent than leveling up. Gu Fei had never used the guild channel before, and only now did he realize how powerful the girls were. By the time the messages flashed, Gu Fei had almost reached the north gate, and this was only the messages that Gu Fei had accumulated after he went online today. If it was all of them. Gu Fei shuddered. Not knowing what to say, Gu Fei thought for a moment and asked, is anyone here? Fuck, are you an idiot? You can't see so many big sisters, so why are you asking if anyone is here? Someone yelled. Gu Fei looked at it fiercely. Is there anyone with a high standard in appraisal art who can help me? Gu Fei asked. The girls did not mention their appraisal skills, but asked what was going on. This was the spirit of gossip. It's urgent. Let's talk about it later. Gu Fei said. My appraisal skill is at level 8, a girl said weakly. Gu Fei did not know what level 8 meant, so he glanced at the girl's name, Ice Glaze. Can we reach the north gate soon? Gu Fei asked. Oh, it's very close. We'll be there soon, Ice Glaze answered. Gu Fei added her as a friend. Thanks. You're welcome, Ice Glaze answered. Chapter 104. Gu Fei reckoned that he had met all the girls who were reborn as Amethyst. However, other than a few, the rest did not match up. As for the one called Ice Glaze, Gu Fei did not know who it was. They arrived at the north gate. There was no one around the mailbox. Gu Fei occupied the spot and looked around. He did not see the face of Amethyst. At this moment, Lu Xia sent him a private message, asking if he needed any help. It's nothing. I just don't know appraisal, so I need help, Gu Fei said calmly. Oh, my appraisal skill is quite strong, but I dropped a level, Lu Xia said regretfully. In theory, the penalty for death was only dropping a level and possibly losing equipment. However, since skills were related to levels, dropping a level would result in a chain of penalties for the skills. For example, to reach level 10 in appraisal, the player had to be at least level 30. If the player dropped a level, the level 10 appraisal skill would not be retained. It would be reduced to the highest level possible at level 29. However, the level of appraisal aside, Gu Fei needed to appraise a character. There was a 100% requirement, the player's level must be higher than or equal to the target. If it was not for this, Gu Fei would have asked Lu Xia, who already knew his background, for help instead of calling for help in the guild. When Gu Fei first joined Amethyst, the levels of the girls in the guild were quite low. 6 months' Rain was the only one who was level 30. However, it had been a few days since then. Perhaps it was because of the incident with the non-smiler that the girls were excited about leveling up. Gu Fei looked at the guild member list again. There were already a few level 30 players, and Ice Glaze was one of them. I'm next to the mailbox, Gu Fei sent a message to Ice Glaze. I see you, Ice Glaze replied. Gu Fei immediately looked around, and sure enough, he saw a kind-looking girl walking towards him from a street not far away. Hi. Ice Glaze walked up to Gu Fei and greeted him. The two of them officially got to know each other. What do you need me to identify? Ice Glaze took the initiative to ask. It's like this. Gu Fei stared at the city gate while briefly explaining the cause of the matter to Ice Glaze. You just need to find this person and leave the rest to me, Gu Fei smiled and sent a copy of the information provided by Sword Demon to Ice Glaze. Oh. If that's the case, I hope I can help. Ice Glaze said. At level 30, the highest appraisal skill could reach was level 10. Ice Glaze was only level 8 at the moment, so she was not confident. Sorry to bother you, said Gu Fei. You're too polite. We're all on the same side after all. Ice Glaze smiled. Since she was willing to come over to help, Gu Fei believed that her words came from the bottom of her heart and wasn't fake courtesy. He couldn't help but feel a bit of warmth in his heart. You're also a mage. Gu Fei looked at Ice Glaze's information and said. Yeah, the same as you. Ice Glaze nodded her head in reply. Let's take a look at the weapon you're using, okay? Gu Fei said. Oh. Ice Glaze didn't even think as she handed the magic staff in her hands over to Gu Fei. The trust in this was something that a newbie like Gu Fei couldn't understand. The value of equipment in the game was even higher than one's life. Borrowing equipment here wasn't much different from asking someone in real life to borrow your life. A tactful person wouldn't make this kind of request, no matter how close their friend was. Gu Fei's heart was open. Even though he understood this logic, he didn't think too much about it when he asked. He just wanted to take a look at the stats of a level 30 mage's magic staff and directly feel how strong the night flowing light sword was. As a result, he unconsciously asked to borrow it and easily borrowed it. After looking at it, he handed it back. Ice Glaze's magic staff was a very normal white staff. The stats were extremely average. Gu Fei didn't think too much about it and pulled out the magic staff that July had given him before. He handed it over to her. Yours doesn't seem to be as good as this one. Ice Glaze took it and looked at it. She nodded her head and said, it's much better than mine. Then take it and use it, Gu Fei said. Liking the new and hating the old happened every day in the game. Ice Glaze wasn't too surprised and didn't hold back. She nodded her head and said, then let me borrow it for a while. It seemed like she really didn't treat Gu Fei as an outsider. Gu Fei continued to look outside the city gates. Ice Glaze looked around with him and appraised the passing players. She didn't find any suspicious people. Not long after, a group of 6 people walked into the city from the main road outside. From the equipment, there was a thief, 2 mages, 2 archers, and a cleric. It matched up with the class composition that Sword Demon had mentioned. Gu Fei's eyes lit up and he immediately pointed it out to Ice Glaze. Ice Glaze had long since noticed this group of people. She nodded her head and waited for the 6 people to enter the range of her identify. The 6 people walked through the city gates and their gazes quickly fell in the direction of the mailbox. Gu Fei felt that the answer was already obvious. As expected, Ice Glaze quickly used Identify to check the results. After comparing them, she nodded at Gu Fei. The 6 people had already arrived in front of them. Gu Fei had just sent a message in the mercenary channel, the target has appeared. Brother, are you sending something? Excuse me. The thief politely said to Gu Fei. To send something, one had to handle the mailbox step by step. Gu Fei was in front of the mailbox. When he heard the other party's words, he politely moved to the side. The other party gave a friendly smile to Gu Fei. Gu Fei also seemed to feel close to them. He asked next to the mailbox, Brother, what's your name? Remnant Dream is dead. The man smiled at Gu Fei as he opened his mailbox. Good name. Gu Fei smiled. He suddenly raised his leg and kicked Remnant Dream's shoulder. The first thing that came to Gu Fei's mind was depression. He was too weak. This was a problem that Gu Fei had been depressed about countless times since he entered the game. But every time it happened, he would stop his train of thought and sigh. With such a powerful side kick, Remnant Dream only staggered a few steps to the side. If this happened in the real world, with his size, a single kick from him would have sent him flying for at least 5 meters. Gu Fei thought gloomily. However, this kick that Gu Fei was very dissatisfied with left Remnant Dream and his companions in a daze. The hostility of this kick was obvious, but the damage it caused was very friendly. Nowadays, some players who didn't have any attack power would play such a crude joke with their friends from time to time. Since it was only a game, falling down wouldn't hurt the body. But the problem was that Remnant Dream and Gu Fei didn't know each other at all. It seemed that he couldn't take such a big joke. Remnant Dream looked at Gu Fei blankly. In the moment of hesitation, Gu Fei had already finished reviewing and flew over to give him another kick. This time, Remnant Dream saw it clearly. He wanted to dodge, but he didn't know why he couldn't avoid it. Gu Fei's kick landed on his head. The damage was still negligible, but it was a little scary to have a clear kick on his face. Remnant Dream lifted the big footprint on his face and was a little panicked. His 5 companions finally reacted. The cleric rushed to heal Remnant Dream first. Fireball, shoot! An archer needed to draw the bow and knock the arrow in order to shoot. On the other hand, a mage was straightforward and just needed to talk. 2 fireballs rushed towards Gu Fei. Gu Fei dashed forward, while consuming the time of the fireball's tracking effect, he took the opportunity to pull away from the archer. The archer's arrow was much faster than the fireball. To dodge it, Gu Fei also needed some time. The bowstring sounded, and the archer's arrow was also released. Gu Fei saw it clearly. He nimbly turned his body and easily dodged the 2 fireballs and the 2 arrows. Everyone was dumbfounded. How precise was his calculation and skill? From their point of view, it seemed that Gu Fei had already calculated that the fireball and the arrow would arrive at the same time. But in fact, the 4 attacks coming from the same direction, whether they arrived first or at the same time, had the same target. As long as Gu Fei moved away from the original position, it was naturally easy to avoid all of them. He was just waiting for the fireball's tracking effect to disappear. As for the arrow and the fireball arriving at the same time, in all honesty, it wasn't Gu Fei's control. They should be amazed at their unintentional ingenuity. After dodging this attack, Gu Fei began to counterattack. There was only one reason why he didn't take the initiative to attack before. Gu Fei had enough of his PK points. So he hoped that the opponent would attack first, so that he could take advantage of the rule of not increasing his PK points by counterattacking. When he rushed in front of these people, the archer was just loading the second arrow, and the mage was just about to open his mouth to cast the spell, Fireball, for the second time. Gu Fei reached for his sword and swung it in a circle. The archer's arrow went askew, and the mage had just shouted the word, Fireball, but it was extinguished before it could burn. After a mage's fireball was summoned, it wouldn't just float there waiting for you to shout, shoot. From fireball to shoot, this was a complete spell release process. If you were attacked during this process, the spell release would immediately be interrupted. At this moment, the people who were already in a mess suddenly changed color. As a mage, Gu Fei and the other two heard the sound above their heads, and their expressions changed. When they looked up, there was indeed a heavenly fire wheel forming. Gu Fei was startled and quickly looked back. Ice Glaze was there, raising her staff. Don't surrender. Gu Fei shouted, and a flame flashed in the sky. The fire wheel formed, and then it fell to the ground. Ah! Ice Glaze screamed with a pale face. Gu Fei didn't expect her to suddenly help, but she didn't expect that as a mage, Gu Fei would actually get close to the enemy after distancing himself. She was going to give this fire wheel to those people, but Gu Fei also came up. Heavenly Fire Wheel, descend. At that time, she was afraid that it would be too slow, so she said these 5 words in one go. How could she keep the last command to attack? At this moment, she could only watch as Gu Fei and the others took on the burning fire wheel together. Chapter 105. The flaming wheel descended from the sky. Its speed was even faster than an archer's snipe. Moreover, the distance wasn't very far. If one wanted to dodge this, they would have to move while the mage was chanting. Gu Fei and the others waited until the flaming wheel appeared before shouting and trying to dodge. No matter how fast they were, they wouldn't be able to dodge in time. As for Gu Fei, he hoped that the flaming wheel wouldn't fall. This was a thought that would only appear when one was completely unfamiliar with the game's habits. The flaming wheel descended, covering the group of people. This was the second time that Gu Fei suffered a strong blow after Xiao Yu's whirlwind slash. His body was engulfed in flames, and his health quickly dropped. Gu Fei was very depressed. Why was it that the people who attacked him were all his friends? However, Ice Glaze wasn't Gu Fei. The Heavenly Flaming Wheel was an AoE spell, with a large area of effect, the corresponding single target damage would be lower. Unless there was a large difference in levels, this move was completely different from an instant kill. Gu Fei's own Heavenly Flaming Wheel had caused the others to cry out in pain, leaving a shadow in his heart. At this time, when Ice Glaze's Flaming Wheel appeared, it made him nervous. In his heart, he was still praying for a priest to appear and save him like last time. Who knew that its power would be so limited, and his health would stop dropping after a bit? In this type of battle that involved magic, the other 5 were clearly more experienced than Gu Fei. Even though they were hit by the Heavenly Flaming Wheel, they didn't panic. Taking advantage of the fact that Gu Fei's health was dropping, they continued to attack. 5 against 1, they didn't feel that there was anything to be afraid of. Gu Fei seemed to have awoken from a dream. Seeing that the other side was about to cast another spell, he immediately swung his sword. Dual Flame Flash, the 2 mages also wanted to use this move. Even though this move's damage was very low, but Gu Fei had just been hit by a Heavenly Flaming Wheel, and now he was hit by 2 mages' Dual Flame Flash. Even if he didn't die on the spot, the 5 seconds of Dual Flame Flash would be enough to burn away Gu Fei's health. Unfortunately, Gu Fei reacted even faster. With a wave of the Nightstreak sword, the two mages' dual flame flash had only managed to shout 2 words before they were destroyed. The two mages were sacrificed as well. After being hit by the heavenly fire wheel and slashed twice by the Dark Knight lightsaber, it would be strange if a mage with a lower HP didn't die. As for the priest among them, he was desperately healing himself and didn't realize that his companion's life was in danger. Archers who were in close combat performed worse than mages. They thought that the two mages would quickly kill off Gu Fei, but who knew that they would be the ones to fall in the end. Only then did the two archers become nervous. They hurriedly took large steps back, wanting to put some distance between them. How could Gu Fei give them this chance? Swoosh swoosh swoosh, he thrust his sword out twice. Gu Fei was a full agility mage. No matter how fast an archer was, it would not be easy for him to show his advantage within a few meters. Although Gu Fei couldn't run as fast as them, it was enough for him to extend his arm and pass the sword. Both of them were stabbed in the back. A white light flashed and they disappeared. Similarly, the heavenly fire wheel and 2 swords were not something the archers could withstand. Glancing back, the priest's staff was already wooden. This guy had just recovered and was ready to help his companions. Who knew that in such a short period of time, his 4 companions had already been defeated by Gu Fei? The minister was at a loss, alone, and helpless. However, Gu Fei did not feel the slightest bit of sympathy. He quickly stepped forward. Compared to Gu Fei's speed, the cleric's difference was too great. The difference was so great that the cleric's advantage could be seen in just a few meters. Gu Fei had caught up to the cleric who was trying to escape, but he only managed to turn his body halfway. Dual flame flash, flash. Gu Fei shouted in a carefree manner. Just now, the two mages could only sing half of the song. They must have been very depressed, right? However, this cleric was clearly a vitality type. After taking Gu Fei's dual flame flash, he actually didn't die. After all, this was currently the skill that mages had the lowest direct damage. As for the 5 seconds of burning damage, that had nothing to do with the weapon in his hand. It was easy for the cleric to endure because he could heal. Gu Fei didn't hesitate and used another dual flame flash. The dark flowing light sword displayed its magic damage, and the priest finally fell. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The flames from Ice Glaze's heavenly fire wheel slowly receded. Of the 6 people that had been trapped by the fire wheel, only Gu Fei was left. Amazing! Gu Fei gave Ice Glaze a thumbs up. They were all insta-killed by you. Unfortunately, Ice Glaze wasn't Little Rain. She understood very well and said with a smile, my PK value didn't increase. These words reminded Gu Fei. He immediately looked at his character's information and saw that his PK value was a bright red 6. Fuck. Gu Fei lost control of his emotions. It was clearly the other side who attacked him first. According to his calculations, at most, the cleric didn't attack him, and then it would add 1 PK value to his account. 1 PK value? 6. Fuck. Gu Fei came to his senses. He had killed that guy in the market, so his PK value was already 1. Rules like self-defense or killing players with PK value didn't work on him anymore. Because he was already a person with PK value. Gu Fei's face was full of tears. As the saying goes, even a wise man would make a mistake. Gu Fei often fell because he ignored the rules of the game. It seemed like he needed to strengthen his PK knowledge and ingrain the rules of PK into his mind. He needed to have a strong awareness of the consequences of his actions. PK value. Since he entered the game, he was the closest to this thing. He had only abandoned it for 3 hours and it had come back again. Ice Glaze naturally didn't know that Gu Fei had so many emotional changes. She said regretfully, that guy escaped with stealth. Ice Glaze was talking about Remnant Dream's death. The equipment data that Gu Fei had provided clearly belonged to this person. Now that he had let him escape, could this be considered a miscalculation on Gu Fei's part? Gu Fei smiled calmly. Isn't he still here? After saying this, Gu Fei flew up, turned in the air, and performed a beautiful roundhouse kick. A figure appeared behind Gu Fei. Remnant Dream's head was tilted to the side, and there was a large footprint on the right side of his face. So handsome. Ice Glaze applauded. Gu Fei laughed, but he didn't think much of it. The layman just watched for fun, while the experts saw the technique. A roundhouse kick was indeed elegant and beautiful, but in a real battle, the value of this kick was limited. To put it simply, the first thing to do was to have the space to use it. During the process of using it, the support of the lower body, as well as the time needed to recover, were all major flaws. In short, this kind of large movement was rarely used in a real battle between experts. The reason why Gu Fei used it now was because his opponent was a layman. Secondly, Remnant Dream's position was too cool, so Gu Fei couldn't help but use this move that he rarely used normally. Thirdly, Gu Fei's kick had been modified by him. Compared to a normal roundhouse kick, Gu Fei's kick was only half a move. In gaming terms, it shortened the casting time of the skill. Naturally, there were fewer openings. Ice Glaze couldn't see this, so she could only praise it. When Gu Fei heard this, he felt that this praise had no substance or meaning. Remnant Dream had been kicked 3 times by Gu Fei and 2 times in the head. Of course, the damage was limited, but it was obvious that he was stunned by Gu Fei's kicks. 5 seconds had passed, and he still maintained his side-tilted face, like a frozen scene in a movie. Gu Fei was happy that he was stunned here. He hadn't killed Remnant Dream yet, and Gu Fei was deliberately stalling for time. From the beginning, he stood in front of the mailbox to block the way. Gu Fei wanted to confirm who had Frostbite's memory, and then determined that it should be Remnant Dream. Thus, Gu Fei took care of the other guys first, leaving Remnant Dream to buy time for the Han family young master and the others. Frostbite's memory dropped after 1 kill. This kind of terrible luck, Sword Demon had already met him once today. He believed that most people wouldn't be so unlucky. So, to get Frostbite's memory, it was necessary to chase. Players who had exquisite weapons would, of course, always carry their equipment with them. This situation was different from Remnant Dream's memory. Frostbite's memory could be transferred at any time, which magnified the difficulty of recovering Frostbite's memory. In fact, Gu Fei didn't have much hope of recovering Frostbite's memory. His main thought was to help Sword Demon vent his anger. Besides, it was really too touching to have a fight. But no matter what, Frostbite's memory was still an important goal. After killing Remnant Dream, the next stop was naturally his resurrection point, the Thieves' Guild. At this time, Gu Fei was waiting for the Han family young master and the others to go there in advance to make the arrangements. Remnant Dream was stunned for 5 seconds before coming back to his senses. He held the dagger in his hand and looked at Gu Fei, but he didn't know how to attack. Escaping was the best plan. When Remnant Dream made this decision, Gu Fei's sword was already swinging. If Remnant Dream wanted to run, Gu Fei really couldn't do anything about it. After the thief activated the level 30 skill Swift Step, Gu Fei wouldn't be able to catch up no matter what. Seeing that Remnant Dream had returned to normal, Gu Fei immediately made his move. He had to tangle with the opponent here until the Han family young master and the others were ready. The dark moonlight sword danced, and the sword light intertwined, forming a sword net. Remnant Dream was completely at a loss as to what to do. Fortunately, he managed to dodge and block Gu Fei's attacks a few times, which comforted him a little. Of course, he couldn't tell that this was all done on purpose by Gu Fei. In such a stalemate, in order to trick the opponent, Gu Fei even pretended to be anxious. This did give Remnant Dream some confidence. Although the opponent was attacking, he was still able to defend. It seemed that his reaction and speed were quite good. Remnant Dream was secretly pleased. If he continued like this, it wouldn't be long before reinforcements arrived. Remnant Dream actually had the same hope as Gu Fei. In the end, both of their hopes weren't fulfilled. Gu Fei suddenly heard a loud female voice behind him, "Yo, they're fighting." Then, he heard Ice Glaze exclaim, fiercely. Ha, I came over to see what was going on. So it's a fight. Let me help you. Fiercely roared. Remnant Dream's heart turned cold, and so did Gu Fei. Chapter 106. Fiercely's appearance was just too timely. This type of gossip was something Gu Fei didn't expect. If he knew that asking for help in Reborn Amethyst would lead to this outcome, Gu Fei would have been more cautious. Right now, only Fiercely came, but he couldn't guarantee that there wouldn't be a second or third person. Thinking about the chat history in Reborn Purple Life's Guild channel, Gu Fei's heart became even colder. He turned around and saw Fiercely's hungry expression. This expression was probably exclusive to Moonlit City players. He didn't think that there would be such a PvP enthusiast in Cloud City. He definitely couldn't let her get involved. Gu Fei only had this thought when he saw Fiercely rush over. He immediately said arrogantly, "Don't come up, I want to fight him one-on-one." Is that so? Lai Lai stopped in his tracks upon hearing this. It seemed like she was a PvP enthusiast. When she heard that the opponent wanted to fight one-on-one, she immediately changed from a participant to a spectator, calmly standing next to Ice Glaze. "How long has it been?" Fiercely asked Ice Glaze. 5 minutes. Ice Glaze said. Gu Fei had been playing with Remnant Dream for 5 minutes. You still haven't settled it in 5 minutes? Fiercely was dumbfounded. PvP in the game wasn't like the duels between experts in wuxia novels. It was impossible to fight for 300 to 500 moves without a winner being decided. Basically, the winner would be decided in a few moves. To be able to fight for 5 minutes was definitely rare. However, when he saw that Gu Fei, a mage, was fighting with someone with a sword, he felt puzzled and relieved at the same time. Using one's weakness to attack the opponent's strength, not being able to take him down in 5 minutes was normal. Not being killed by the opponent was already pretty good. Moreover, it looked like Gu Fei had the upper hand. Why is he fighting in close combat? Fiercely asked Ice Glaze. She, who was late, thought that there were some twists and turns. Maybe the exquisite sword he has is powerful in some way. Ice Glaze had always thought so. No matter where it was, the Dark Knight flowing light sword would always stand out and stand out. Was he a close combat mage? Fiercely flashed this thought in his mind, but he quickly shook his head and threw it out. A melee mage, the PvP King 27149, couldn't even take care of a little thief in 5 minutes? What was he thinking? He actually fantasized about his idol when he saw a random melee mage. This was clearly blasphemy. Ever since melee mages became famous on the forums, many mages in the game had begun to imitate them. Just based on close combat alone, it could no longer prove anything. Fiercely rejected his own conjecture and continued to watch the battle. It couldn't be denied that Gu Fei's technique was too brilliant. With the addition of an appropriate expression, not only did he fool Remnant Dreams, he also fooled the 2 girls who were supposed to be watching from the sidelines. Fiercely had always considered herself to have some foundation in Kung Fu. A real Kung Fu master was performing in front of her, yet she couldn't tell at all. She even blindly complained, "Hey, why did it go wrong again? Ah, it's blocked. Can't you move a bit faster?" After another 2 minutes, Fiercely began to jeer, "Can you do it or not? If you can't, then come down. Let big sister go." Lai Lai, stop arguing, Glazed Ice, who was at the side, advised. "He can't," Fiercely said. Ice Glaze didn't say anything. She had been watching from the sidelines for a long time. Even though she couldn't tell from Gu Fei's movements, the 2 mages, 2 archers, and a cleric had all been taken care of by Gu Fei. Even with her heavenly fire will as a foundation, taking care of 5 characters in an instant wasn't easy. Moreover, the 3 kicks that Gu Fei gave to Remnant Dreams were still fresh in her mind. How could a person who could kick his opponent 3 times suddenly not be able to stab his opponent with a single stab? Ice Glaze deserved to be called a girl who was as meticulous as silk. She noticed every detail that could be noticed. Of the 2 girls, one was trying to guess what Gu Fei was thinking, while the other was loudly shouting to disturb Gu Fei's thoughts. Fortunately, they didn't ruin Gu Fei's plan. However, weren't the Han family young master and the others a bit too slow? Gu Fei felt a bit impatient. Then, a figure flashed across the street. The enemy's 2 archers had actually returned a step ahead of them. Cloud City's archer range was closer to the north gate and the archers were faster. Don't worry about me. You guys go take care of those 2 girls. They're together. Remnant Dream yelled. Gu Fei said that he wanted to duel him, but he didn't let the 2 girls interfere. Remnant Dream was overjoyed. The 2 archers had been in a daze ever since they arrived. In their eyes, Gu Fei was a ruthless character. They didn't think that Remnant Dream would still be alive after such a long time. Remnant Dream didn't reply to their messages, so the 2 decided to move over first. Who knew that they wouldn't receive a reply from the Thief Guild? In the blink of an eye, they arrived at their destination. Remnant Dream was still fighting back. The 2 immediately felt great admiration for Remnant Dream and said in unison, "Not bad. It's nothing." Remnant Dream was proud of himself. Gu Fei's 7-minute performance helped him increase his confidence by 7 times. Gu Fei saw that the other side had help and Remnant Dream was still so arrogant, so he was unhappy. He didn't swing his sword. Instead, he leaped into the air and did a standard roundhouse kick that landed on Remnant Dream's face. Remnant Dream's forehead and right cheek already had a footprint. Gu Fei had to leave the footprint on the left side of his face. After the kick, the footprint on the left side of his face was half a centimeter lower than the right side. Gu Fei sighed. It seemed that his left and right legs weren't completely synchronized. There was still half a centimeter difference. Seeing that Remnant Dream was kicked, the 2 archers were also stunned. They turned their bows and aimed at Gu Fei. "Can you do it?" The 2 asked Remnant Dream again. Remnant Dream shook his head. Was everything just a dream? Why couldn't the opponent's martial arts hit him? Instead, he couldn't dodge such a difficult move. What was going on? Remnant Dream was at a loss. Was it because this move didn't do any damage, so the system decided that he didn't need to dodge? Remnant Dream thought from the perspective of an online game and gradually deviated from the right path. Gu Fei was worried about not being able to deal with the 2 archers. On the other side, Fiercely had already rushed up excitedly. "Leave these 2 to me," she shouted. The 2 archers didn't care about Remnant Dream's death anymore. They turned their knocked arrows and shot at Fiercely. Fortunately, the 2 had just lost a level and didn't know the strongest skill of the archer, snipe. The 2 of them prepared to use the archer's level 24 skill, double hit. This skill wasn't weak, but it had a flaw, which was that it took a long time to activate. However, this wasn't a forced design by the system. It was a human effect. Of course, it was more troublesome to knock 2 arrows on the string than to knock 1. Without long-term training, it was hard to knock an arrow so quickly. If the arrow wasn't knocked properly, then it would be very problematic for the arrow to hit its target. This was what the legendary archers needed to do. Moreover, under normal circumstances, archers hid in the dark and could calmly knock an arrow and release it. Therefore, there were very few people who would spend time in this area to strengthen their training. As a result, when faced with this kind of emergency situation, most archers wouldn't be as nimble as before. These 2 were obviously one of them. Their trembling arrows couldn't be knocked properly. The one on the left was quick-witted. Seeing that he was about to be closed in, he knew that saving his life was more important. He decisively gave up 1 arrow and used the newbie skill, Strong Arrow, with the other arrow. The one on the right was inspired. He didn't use double hit anymore and hurriedly used Strong Arrow with his other hand. One after the other, the 2 of them launched a double combo, in the form of a two-people rotation. Fiercely's reaction was fast, and she quickly shook her body. She dodged the first arrow, but the second arrow accurately hit its target. However, a mere, strong arrow wouldn't be able to kill anyone. Fiercely had already rushed to the front of the two. The closer he got, the more the archer's nocked arrow trembled. Fiercely shouted, and the arrow in one of their hands fell to the ground. This person turned and ran, not feeling embarrassed at all. From a tactical point of view, this was to rely on speed to open up a distance with the enemy. Running and shooting at the same time was called kiting. It was a skill that archers had to master. However, Fiercely had a lot of combat experience. Once he saw that the person was about to run, he immediately activated the Grandmaster of Combat's level 24 skill, Galloping Meteor. His speed suddenly increased, and he stabbed his fist into the person's waist. Luckily, he triggered the stun effect. Then, he calmly used heavy punches, uppercuts, and bouncing kicks. The opponent flew into the air. Fiercely's hands were really fast. With a stretch and a hug, he dragged the opponent's legs and threw him back to the ground. With a flash of white light, he died. His moves were faster than the coward's savior. Gu Fei continued to wear down Remnant Dream's death. He was also paying attention to the situation on the other side. Seeing Fiercely's moves, he quickly made an evaluation. That last throw had some damage. It seemed like it was a hug throw. With the speed of the coward's savior, it was impossible to follow up with a hug throw after the bouncing kick. It seemed like these two Grandmasters of Combat had different ways of adding points. The other archer didn't stay idle. He took the opportunity to accurately fire 2 consecutive shots. However, the other girl, Ice Glaze, was no longer a bystander. At this time, she had already entered the attack range of spells. The level 30 skill, Rapid Fireball, had already been cast, and she rushed towards the archer with great momentum. This girl was really quiet when using spells. This time, he didn't hear her chant. After Gu Fei evaluated Fiercely, he evaluated Ice Glaze. The speed of a sorcerer's spells was much slower than an archer's arrows. It wasn't that hard to dodge. The archer dodged to the side and dodged the Rapid Fireball. He only suffered some area of effect damage. "Leave it to me," Fiercely shouted, stopping Ice Glaze from continuing to chant. Grandmasters of Combat were also a typical close combat profession. They had the advantage when facing an archer in close combat. Fiercely threw another round of punches at the archer, easily finishing him off. "Winner! Fiercely!" Fiercely raised his arms and cheered. Ice Glaze pursed her lips and didn't say anything. It seemed like she was already used to this. Fighting 2 archers consecutively, Fiercely used up a lot of mana. Of course, for a Grandmaster of Combat, mana was renamed as internal energy. Its nature was still the same. It was used up when releasing skills. Fiercely sat on the ground and munched on an apple to recover. He pointed at Gu Fei and shouted, "You're too bad. Can you do it? If you can't, let me do it." Gu Fei turned around and made an admiring expression at Fiercely, "Let me try again. If I can't do it, you do it." Fiercely nodded in satisfaction and taught Gu Fei, "You look like you've trained a little, right? That roundhouse kick just now wasn't bad." "I'm sorry." Gu Fei was humble. But Fiercely immediately said in a serious tone, "But Big Sister will teach you something. Although this kind of kick looks good, don't ever use it in a real battle. There are too many flaws." Gu Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he couldn't refute. His kick just now was indeed the type that looked fancy and had a lot of flaws. Ice Glaze patted Fiercely and said, "Hurry up and recover. There might be 2 more mages coming." The Mage Academy was a bit far from the North Gate. Most mages didn't run that fast. It would take some time to get here, but they would eventually arrive. "Is that so?" Lai Lai immediately became excited again. He increased the speed at which he ate the apple. At the same time, he took out a piece of bread. Almost done, almost done. Fruits recovered magic power while other foods recovered life force. Sure enough, just as he finished eating, a head popped out from one of the streets. Fiercely was looking around in his lonesome when he saw the sneaky head. It was obvious that it didn't have good intentions. He's here. Fiercely got up and rushed towards the entrance of the street. The head immediately retracted after seeing this. Fiercely, don't be rash. Ice Glaze shouted anxiously and quickly chased after him. Fiercely paused for a bit and waited for Ice Glaze to catch up. The two ran to the entrance of the street together. They turned around, but didn't see the head from before. He ran away. Fiercely said regretfully. What they didn't know was that the person had already circled behind them, knocked an arrow and aimed at the two. The person who came was another archer. Fiercely and Ice Glaze didn't know, but Goo Face saw something strange in Remnant Dream's eyes. He quickly looked back and yelled, "Don't shoot, we're on the same side." Ah! Following the yell, the arrow had already been released. The sneaky head came from Yutian Shinming. It was obvious that he was much better than the two archers from before. He knew the advantages of an archer and how to fight, so he didn't completely expose himself in front of the enemy. As soon as he saw that he was discovered, the first thing he did wasn't to knock an arrow and snipe, but to calmly change his strategy. He had purposely chosen the entrance of the street where he exposed himself. The street was short and the archer moved quickly. He quickly disappeared from the street, turned around, and went behind Fiercely and Ice Glaze from another street. The sound of the arrow whistled. With such a loud sound, it was obviously the strongest archer's skill, snipe. Snipe from Yutian Shinming. Even Little Rain was shot to death. Fiercely and Ice Glaze. Goo Fei closed his eyes and thought about how to explain this misunderstanding to the girls. Ah! The girls heard Goo Fei's yell and had already turned around. They saw the arrow coming towards them like a gust of wind. It was as if the arrow was going to pierce through the two of them. The two of them could only let out a scream before the arrow arrived in front of them. The speed of the snipe was not something that a normal player could dodge. Who would have thought that this sniper's shot would not hit anyone? The sniper's shot passed between Lai Lai's and Glazed Ice's heads. The wind caused the hair on their heads to flutter and their faces to turn pale. That was close. Yutian Shinming let out a long sigh. Goo Fei heard him mumble. He looked up and saw that the two girls were not dead. He was overjoyed. You missed. On purpose. Yutian Shinming said. It was hard to tell if it was true or not. Good shot. Goo Fei praised. You're the one who missed. I purposely turned to that position. It was because I shot accurately that they didn't die. Yutian Shinming shouted. Yutian Shinming muttered in his heart. Another two girls. Is Qianli really that capable? Looks like I'll have to try his pickup line one day. Why are you here? Goo Fei suddenly remembered that these people should be hiding in the Thieves' Guild. Why did they come to the North Gate? Just passing by. Yutian Shinming was already behind Remnant Dream. He was talking to Goo Fei while winking at him. What's up this time? Goo Fei muttered in his heart. They probably talked about it in the mercenary channel, but Goo Fei didn't have the time to look at it right now. Hey, pretty girls. Yutian Shinming ignored Goo Fei and went to greet the two girls. Fiercely and Ice Glaze nodded at him. Fiercely, who had just finished off the two archers, had already started to look down on this class. Imperial Sky Divine Ming arrived just in time to give her a show of strength, making her think of that unbearably vulgar saying, there are no trashy jobs, only trashy players. The three of them stood on the side of the road and watched Goo Fei's performance. Are you his friend? Fiercely asked Yutian Shinming. Yutian Shinming nodded. He can't do it. He won't even let us help. Fiercely complained. Yutian Shinming nodded again and said, young people have to be given a chance to train, or else they'll never be able to do it. If you let me go, I'll be able to finish him off in 2 or 3 moves. There's no point. Motherfucker. Gu Fei heard it clearly and cursed in his heart. Yutian Shinming was obviously looked down on by Gu Fei because of his age, so he took the opportunity to take revenge. What is he practicing? Ice Glaze asked curiously. She faintly felt that Gu Fei was using Remnant Dream as an experiment. Practicing swordsmanship. Yutian Shinming saw that Gu Fei was also randomly stabbing with his sword, so he casually said. Fiercely immediately laughed out loud, swordsmanship. How is this swordsmanship? I'm dying of laughter. Being laughed at, Gu Fei wasn't happy in his heart. But this time he was helpless. Who told him to put on such a lame act? How could an ordinary person understand this kind of brilliant technique that was full of ingenuity but not skill? If he tried to explain it to them, it would only make things worse. So he could only endure it. On the other side, Yutian Shinming didn't give up. He put on the weirdest expression he had in his life and mysteriously said to the 2 girls, let me tell you a secret, Qianli knows Kung Fu. Fiercely burst out laughing again. Even Ice Glaze couldn't hold back and pursed her lips to the side. Yutian Shinming very seriously said, it's true. Yes, we believe you. Fiercely held back his laughter and also put on a serious face. He clapped and said, good swordsmanship, ha 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 ha. In the end, he still couldn't hold back and continued to laugh. Hee hee. Yutian Shinming laughed sinisterly. His plot succeeded. In the eyes of these 2 girls, Gu Fei's image must be very comical, right? That's what you get for arrogantly looking down on me as an adult. Yutian Shinming thought happily. Gu Fei was naturally displeased that he was being mocked by others. He wanted to slap Remnant Dream a few more times, but when he saw the 3 footprints on her head, he gave up immediately. On the other side, Yutian Shinming came over. Suddenly, Gu Fei came to a realization. These guys knew that he must be pestering Remnant Dream to buy time, so he definitely didn't have time to read the news. This way, even if they were ready at the Thieves' Guild, they wouldn't be able to inform him. Thus, they sent Yutian Shinming, who ran the fastest, to be the messenger. This arrangement was really too considerate. Gu Fei, Han family young master didn't have the face of a woman for nothing, he was really considerate. If it was Gu Fei who came up with this kind of plan, he might not be able to predict every detail. Just as he was thinking about this, he suddenly heard a thunderous sound behind him. Yutian, you run really fast. Wasn't this Unscathed in Battle's voice? Gu Fei hurriedly turned around. Not only Unscathed in Battle, Brother Yu had also arrived, and they were striding towards him. What the hell was going on? This time, Gu Fei was completely confused. Before he could understand, a voice came from the other side, huh? They're all here, but I'm the slowest. Gu Fei turned his head and saw the handsome face of the Han clan's young master. Great, you're still catching him. Hurry up and catch him, let me deal with him personally. Han family young master said to the others. Ice Glaze suddenly realized, Qianli was really stalling for time, waiting for this person to give him a chance to vent his anger. Remnant Dream looked at Han family young master in confusion. Who is this? When did I offend this person? She thought. Gu Fei naturally knew that this wasn't the case. While he was still confused, Han family young master had already waved his hand at Gu Fei. Alright, don't you have something urgent to do? Hurry up and log off. Unscathed in Battle, Brother Yu, Han family young master, and even the ranged class Yutian Shinming all came up, trapping Remnant Dream in the middle. Gu Fei backed away in confusion. These people came one after another, what was the meaning of this? Then, the moment he brushed past Han family young master, Gu Fei received a message from Han family young master, go to the Thieves' Guild, watch the mercenary channel for the rest. Chapter 107. Gu Fei left the battlefield and rushed towards the Rogue Guild. The first thing he did on the way was to thank the two girls from the Reborn Amethyst who came to help him out. Even though one of them was just here to gossip, she had at least killed 2 archers and put in a lot of effort. Originally, Gu Fei wanted to say it in the guild channel, but as soon as he opened the channel, the record was refreshed once more, causing Gu Fei to faint. Gu Fei immediately closed it and swore that he would never open the guild channel again. He then added fiercely as a friend and sent each of them a message, "Thank you for your help. Just leave the rest to them." "You're welcome." Ice Glaze replied. "Where are you going?" Fiercely asked. "The Rogue Guild," Gu Fei said. "Oh." Fiercely seemed to understand and didn't say anything else. Gu Fei opened the mercenary channel and looked at the chat history of the others. Only then did he understand the situation. The reason for this arrangement was because Remnant Dream was a rogue. These people often hunted and killed for equipment, so they should be very familiar with the respawn point. If he was wary of the enemy's arrangements in the Rogue Guild, he would definitely use stealth to leave. The only one who could see through stealth was Gu Fei, even though they didn't know what method Gu Fei was using. They really didn't understand. Gu Fei smiled bitterly. He could sense people in stealth. Saying it was killing intent was a cool explanation. In reality, he could feel the other party's attention on him. The principle lay in the collision of auras between people. As martial artists cultivated their body and chi for a long period of time, their inner breath was much stronger than that of ordinary people. As a result, the resulting aura was also more sensitive. Thus, they could detect this kind of minuscule collision. Endocrine imbalance would cause a person's aura to be chaotic, and with a chaotic aura, it would be difficult to sense other people's attention. It seemed that there was a reasonable explanation for his failure to complete the mission. Gu Fei thought. He was never one to back down easily, but at this time, a group of people who didn't know the situation had placed all their hopes on Gu Fei's aura. Is my aura that strong? Gu Fei had a rare lack of confidence. While sighing, Gu Fei hurried on his way. No matter what, he had to get there first. Over at the North Gate mailbox, Remnant Dream was surrounded by 4 people with 3 big footprints on his face. Each of them had been blessed by Brother Yu. 3 of them didn't do anything at all. They just watched as the Han family young master bombarded him with the weakest spell in the parallel world, Holy Light Ball. Weak power, slow speed, and dazzling light were the only advantages of this spell. In order to stall for time, the Han family young master's Holy Light Ball would miss from time to time. Remnant Dream waved his dagger and rushed around, but the 4 people cooperated and kept him in the center of the circle. Plus, with the perfect recovery spell from the Han family young master, everything Remnant Dream did was useless. This scene was simply like 4 cats teasing a mouse. Just think about how cruel this was. In the spirit of gossip, Glazed Ice and Lai Lai, who did not leave the scene immediately, could not bear to watch any longer. The 2 of them held hands and encouraged each other as they prepared to leave. "What are you going to do?" Ice Glaze asked fiercely. "I'm going to find Xianli," Fiercely said. "Why are you looking for him?" Glazed Ice was curious. "My woman's instinct tells me that if I follow him, I'll get into a fight," Fiercely said. "You're a PK maniac." Ice Glaze was speechless. Fiercely chuckled. The girls in Amethyst's guild were all pacifist. Other than her, no one else had such a hobby. Normally, when they were out leveling, they would occasionally have small conflicts with others. But every time Fiercely flew into a rage and tried to use force, the other girls would first pacify her and then negotiate with the other party. Now that the players' levels were high and they had accumulated a lot of experience, they would try to avoid PK if they could. Looking at the group of girls, any of them would be willing to give in to the other party. There was no way they would fight. Fiercely only had a bad temper, but she wasn't the type to cause trouble for no reason. It wasn't easy to find an opportunity to PK, seeing that Gu Fei was engaged in a PK drama to clear his name. He couldn't help but feel an itch in his heart. He couldn't wait to get involved. Ice Glaze was calmer and advised, "Don't cause trouble for him. Be good and let's go level." Fiercely didn't care, "Then I'll watch from the side. If there's an emergency, I'll fall from the sky." Cool. "You just want to fight," Ice Glaze said. Fiercely pinched Ice Glaze's face. "If I hadn't arrived, would you have been able to deal with those two archers?" Ice Glaze was speechless. Archers were the bane of mages. Not to mention two, even one Ice Glaze would be hard to deal with. Moreover, she was an absolute pacifist and never participated in PK. Just now, when he had helped Gu Fei throw that heaven's fire wheel, he was trembling as he chanted. After he was done, he realized that he had almost killed Gu Fei. He blamed himself for not having any PvP experience, so he shouldn't have acted recklessly. With her skills, let alone an archer, even a warrior who was countered by a mage would have a hard time winning. If Fiercely hadn't appeared in time, it would have been troublesome. "Ha, you have nothing to say, right? Go and level up. I'm leaving." Fiercely turned around and ran. "Be careful," Ice Glaze yelled. Fiercely waved his hand and ran further and further away. Remnant Dream, who was by the mailbox, was about to be killed by the Holy Light Orb. Their reinforcements still hadn't appeared. Normal mages didn't have the speed of Gu Fei. It would take a while for them to arrive from the mage camp. As for the two archers, they knew that they couldn't win, so they wouldn't come to their deaths. They were gathering people to attack together. The Han family's young master and the others, who had plenty of battle experience, naturally realized that Remnant Dream's dead helper was definitely on the way. According to the information Brother Yu had gathered, this was a group of people with decent equipment and high PvP standards. They were also much more united than the average guild. The mercenary group only had 6 people, so they couldn't fight them head-on. They had to hurry up. "Mage Quan Min, are you here yet?" Han family young master asked Gu Fei. I'm here. I can see the door. You guys can start now," Gu Fei said. Han family young master immediately said in the mercenary channel, "Do it." The 3 of them stood there like idiots and asked each other in the channel, "Who did he attack first?" "I forgot," the 3 of them said. Han family young master was furious. "Why are you still dilly-dallying over some PK points at a time like this?" The 3 of them glanced at him and said in the channel, "Aren't you the same? He can just use the Holy Light Orb to kill him. Why aren't you doing anything? I'm a pure and noble priest. How can I be tainted by something as filthy as PK points?" Han family young master cursed. Everyone booed. "Fuck you." Gu Fei, who was squatting outside the Thieves' Guild, had the most reason to be unhappy. According to Han family young master's description, wasn't he playing Super Mario in a small cesspool? At this moment, the sword ghost, who was hiding somewhere, said weakly in the tone of an experienced person, "Stop arguing. He really doesn't touch things like PK points." "Really? My intel didn't mention this," Brother Yu exclaimed. "What? Are you a neat freak?" Yutian Shinming asked. Pfft. Gu Fei expressed his disdain. "Must you guys wait until he realizes that we're stalling for time to set up an ambush and then make arrangements outside the Thieves' Guild?" Han family young master said. Sword Demon, who was familiar with him, could already picture his unique gentle expression. Yutian Shinming and the other 2 who were at the scene saw it with their own eyes. At this moment, Zhan Wushang displayed the decisiveness that a mature man should have. Without a second word, he went up and killed Remnant Dream with his sword. "Qianli, get ready," Han family young master ordered. "Roger," Gu Fei replied. Gu Fei, who was hiding outside the Thieves' Guild, peeked inside. He immediately saw the reborn Remnant Dream die. The 3 footprints on her face had also been washed away by her rebirth. As soon as he revived, he immediately ran out of the door. How convenient. Gu Fei was happy. Looking at him, it was obvious that he wasn't going to do any stealth. Gu Fei retracted his body, only to see Remnant Dream scurrying out of the Thieves' Guild. Hey! Gu Fei shouted and jumped out. Everyone looked over, including Remnant Dream. It's you. Remnant Dream froze and immediately understood what was going on. He was very familiar with this kind of ambush at the revival point. It was because Gu Fei's skills were too high and the Han family young master's acting was too realistic. In the end, he was completely fooled. And Gu Fei's skills were still very influential. Remnant Dream saw him but he wasn't afraid at all. This was a guy who could kick him without hurting him, but couldn't kill him with a weapon. Remnant Dream still thought that way. Thus, he calmly stared at Gu Fei's sword and smiled as he waved his dagger to block. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.